Welcome back to the SPL Smite fans. We are sitting here about to approach a beautiful game. But before we get to that game, I want to thank real quick our sponsor Alienware for providing us with these great PCs, laptops, all that sort of stuff that our players are using and us at the staff use at home. And if you want to, you can check out this beautiful link here. And I believe we have the perfect link right here. Yeah, smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITE, AWSMITE09 for the discount code. And thank you guys so much at Alienware for sponsoring us. We love the gear. It's the best. You guys know it by now. But I am Trelly Relly, joined here by Hurrywind on the desk. We're going to be talking about this set, the Jade Dragons versus the Oni Warriors. And it should be a great one, right? When I'm thinking about both of these teams, both undefeated at the moment as of phase number 3. So there's definitely a lot on the line.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get a lot of these undefeated matchups throughout the regular splits. I mean, we've got two teams that are undefeated right now, so they're a dime a dozen. So I'm really looking forward to how these teams are going to play today.
All
Who's
right.
the top dog?
Well, that's what we want to find out. But real quick, let's take a look at the schedule to see what we've done and what we still have yet to come through this week. At the moment, we see that the Valhalla Valkyries just got 2-0 by the Tartarus Titans, and now the Oni Warriors up against the Jade Dragons. But tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. to check out the Bolts and the Leviathans. That's going to be a great set, followed by the Camelot Kings versus the Oni Warriors, and the Dragons and the Titans coming back one more time to end off our week. But again, this is going to be such a good matchup because if you look at the standings, 2-0 are the Jade Dragons, and 1-0, the Oni Warriors are down in 4th, but they're still undefeated thus far in phase number 3. And I think whenever there's something to lose like this, like an undefeated streak, that's when you really get to see these teams whip out the creative strategies, that sort of thing. Picks and bans, I feel. Those are the sort of things that I want to look at when seeing like the Jade Dragons because, again, their mid-jungle synergy is a bit ridiculous to the point where you don't even know if Pagon's going to be playing in mid or if he's going to be playing in jungle or vice versa. I mean, Scream pulled out Atlas and looked really solid on it. There's just so many different strategies these guys can employ.
Yeah, I mean, it really is just crazy to think that these guys can I mean, I can't even remember my history of time playing this game, which is far longer than probably most people ever should play a game. But the fact that these guys can switch back and forth between mid and jungle is just something that makes them incredibly hard to draft against. And not only that, like we've mentioned, I'm sure talked about a million times now, but the fact that Scream is playing like something like Atlas mid or Pagon's playing something like a Wheelix jungle. So just kind of goes to show the the malleability of these two teams or of this team and their ability to kind of like swap between different play styles. It makes once again really hard to draft against, and you just really never know what they're going to bring to the table.
Yeah, that's a $5 word for sure, and I do agree. It's one of those things where, in ranked, if I'm playing mid and my jungle picks the god for me and they forget to trade, we lose. Like if I'm on a pick where I don't understand what's going on, like that is it. But Pagon's here just swapping in so well as Scream again. I think it just goes to show because we always talk about with the Jade Dragons. Mike and Panda Cat, they've all played with Scream before. They've won a world championship with Scream before, but Pagon's new to the roster, and it seems like already they've been able to cement themselves as the best team in the league, undefeated since Scream joined this roster. And the duo themselves, not the duo lane, the duo of Scream and Pagon, certainly something to be messed with. So, and I also want to zoom in on what you were saying, where trying to draft against it. When you're up against, it's Dardes and Cuvo Fred on the opposition, right, as the mid jungle. They have some interesting god picks. I do think that Dardes has one of the more wide god pools out of most of the mid laners in the league right now, considering. But Cuvo Fred's a traditional jungler through and through. I don't imagine him swapping over to play Atlas mid or anything like that. So do you think that's going to come into play in this matchup, just god picks wise?
Yeah, I mean, Dardas definitely has a wide god pool. He's not really a player that I think you can necessarily ban out, but it's never a surprise what he ends up on, whether it be that AMC, the Morrigan, anything else he's been playing lately. He doesn't really bring anything necessarily new to the table, but he definitely has a wide enough god pool to the point where he always has something to play. Fred's definitely, like you mentioned, more of that like traditional jungler. He plays a lot of the more traditional picks, like the Nemesis, the Erlang when it's good, the Daji when it's good. So they're just a consistent duo, I would say, more so than the Dragons, which are maybe a little bit more explosive. So if any of these two duos are going to be making plays in the early game, I imagine it'll probably be the Dragons, but you can really never count the Warriors out. They're definitely always ready for any kind of aggression that might come their way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like the Dragons are always scheming, trying to find that early aggression, whereas the Oni Warriors, when I think of Cuvo, sitting by, farming the back camps every once in a while until about level 5, and then once an ultimate comes through, Cuvo still is allowed to get active in the early and try and facilitate his team off the back of, early rotations from Neilma, for example, or just leaving Nika alone in that lane. He usually can fend by himself, that sort of thing. So I would not be surprised if that's the playstyle coming in, because the Dragons, a team that has been extremely hot as of recent, you never know what they're going to bring, especially during the picks and bans phase. You don't know where these picks are going until they're actually cemented in the game. I would not be surprised if the Oni Warriors play a bit reserved and just say, all right, let's wait and see like how this is going to be playing, how we're going to be continuing this until we can actually look to fight for these objectives, that sort of thing. But I still like the playstyle because Cuvo is not one to dial it back, even in a matchup like this. But besides Cuvo, let's talk about one more time PBM. I believe we have an interview sitting by, so let's go jump into PBM and see what he had to say.
Well, in the beginning of the year, I feel like we had a lot of work to do that kind of leaked over from last year, just in terms of like map play, how we saw the game, and just some differences there. And of course, like integrating Daniel into Pro League play was a pretty big like challenge at first, not because he wasn't ready for it, but there's just a lot of like small nuanced things you have to teach a newer rookie into the league. And of course, Daniel's learned super quickly and been a great player. I think now what we're working on is more just team identity and kind of how far we can push things, how far we can push the meta. I think we're definitely the team to beat right now. So just continuing to add new things to advance us ahead of everyone else is what I really want to focus on. To me, the importance isn't really as much in each set and the win-loss. It's just more, continuing to improve throughout the rest of the year. We still, though we haven't lost a set yet with Stream, we're still, getting used to him. We've only had a couple months playing with him, so just continuing to build synergy, continue to lock down our identity, and add new things that make it harder to play against us is really the goal. I think the Warriors are pretty similar now, compared to Phase 1, and of course they haven't had a roster change or anything like that. The Warriors, I think, have been a little bit more inconsistent when it comes to regular season play, but they're just, of course, a super talented team. I think that they always present challenges when you draft against them. They have a few players who are very, very comfortable on certain picks, and they're just a really solid team. They looked great in their Week 1 match, so it should be a fun match. Going up against the Warriors, we definitely feel confident. I feel like we had a pretty good Week 1. We've had, some fairly productive scrims, so we're just going to keep trying to test things and, keep trying to push things forward, and, hopefully if we play our game, we come out with a win.
An overwhelming amount of confidence and respect. I think that was mixed in there. Where Mike was saying, yeah, we're confident we're going to win, but we always have to give respect to the Warriors. They've got a couple players on certain picks that you don't want to let them have. For example, Cuvo, Fred, Ondashi. That's something that you never want to see. Giving Dart as the Morgan, when that is also in contention, is usually just a death sentence. So I think respectful, but also confident. That's what I usually think of when I think of PBM.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a tenured player, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's very confident. I've really struggled, especially playing with him last year, to see a time when he's not truly confident. But he's never going to let it spill out. He's always going to, like you said, bring respect towards his opponents, take everyone just as seriously as everyone else, whether they be an 8th seed team, a 2nd seed for seed team, first seed team, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So, that just really comes with the experience. He comes with a winning mentality. He comes with a winning game plan. He's confident in that, and he's going to be ready for, whatever the other team is going to have that day.
You know what? I just, I feel like I'm not abusing you enough in the sense of you actually teamed with these guys before. So is the shot calling that PBM brings that charismatic? You hear him call for a call and you're just going for it no matter what.
Yeah, Mike just takes control, and that is something that you need in a teammate. Like, jokes aside, like sometimes it's like, but I'm happy to have played with him. He's definitely a great leader. That being said, I mean, I'm curious to see what they're going to be doing and how he's going to be leading picks and bans.
Well, I'm excited to jump into those as well. So let's check out the picks and bans. I think Final K was just, taunting the enemy from across the hall there, possibly just saying like, hey, you guys are going down, something like that. Maybe just some friendly hand gestures. But the Jade Dragons are going to be first pick here, and that presents a whole new realm of challenges, right, for the Oni Warriors. Because if when they're in first pick, I feel they always try and just gravitate the draft towards getting something along the lines of, the Daji for Cuvo, something he feels confident on. The Pele also comes to mind. But now that the Jade Dragons are first pick, it's going to be one of those changes where you have to be like, okay, now we have to make sure that they don't get what they want. There's so many different compositions that the Jade Dragons are running. Which one are they going to go to? Because we know Pagon can go like a Susano mid and just solo you in that sense. But also he can lean back on like the Yu Huang. And then also, he can play a Wheelix jungle, that sort of thing. So I don't envy the situation that the Oni Warriors are in, trying to figure out what to not give the Jade Dragons early on in the draft.
Yeah, so I am actually really curious. It seems like most teams have come to the consensus that first pick is the stronger side.
Right.
Just sort of with a lot of the problem characters right now, being able to be first pick gives you a lot of free bans. It also opens up the possibility to get a really strong first pick character like maybe Yamoja, maybe Guan Yu, depends on the team.
Hmm.
The Dragons are actually a team, but that because they have so many flex picks, they also probably would do well on second pick side. But I guess in this particular case, they've decided that they want first pick. Regardless, one thing you'll notice about the Dragons very often when they are drafting is that in their top three, and this is a pretty common strategy I would say for a lot of pro teams these days, is they will really stick to those flex picks. So when you don't necessarily know if something is going to solo, if it's going to jungle, in this case if it's going to mid, or support, really just all 5 roles of the Dragon,
at this point,
it really does throw a wrench in your game plan. And you might see their top 3 picks, but you don't know any more about the draft than you did before it started. So just something to look out for and something I'd keep in mind when you see these guys draft.
Yeah, so I did expect something like this, whereas the Jade Dragons, because they're in first pick, can get those bans that are still very strong but more so targeted. The Dajis, the AMCs, those are things that the Oni Warriors love. Whereas the Warriors, they have to stick to the more meta bans, the things that you do not want to let through. The Ymir, the Yamoja, wouldn't be surprised if the Kabrakan or the Guan Yu was also something that was pretty highly prioritized here for the Warriors. And then also the Morgan coming through from the Jade Dragon. So notably, that Kabrakan is going to be let through. That Guan Yu and Hades is going to be that ban that the Oni Warriors did not want to give over to Fine. Okay, he's been having a great performance on the solo lane, but as I said, that does in fact leave open the Kabrakan. And as you said, we don't know where that Kabrakan's going. That pick can play like 3 different roles at this point. More often goes over to support, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it flexed over to solo or even jungle if may be.
I'd say this draft, Trelly, sort of went the way both teams would expect. I'm guessing Dragons are happy to get Kabrakan first pick, and I'm guessing that the Warriors are happy to get that Guan Yu, and potentially that E set as well. You know, the Dragons kind of stuck towards some target bans for their first bans, trying to ban out Dardes here with his 2 most notable picks being AMC and Morgan. So it looks like Dardes is going to go towards the E set, though, which is a little bit different. We haven't seen her in a while. She kind of fell off a bit, but it's going to be interesting to see how she performs seeing a team pick her up finally.
Yeah, speaking of gods that fell off, the Pele gets locked in. Not that character. Pele's still great, but Cthulhu is a pick that I haven't seen prioritized this highly in quite some time. Brings overwhelming team fight presence, but the pressure in lane, you can't really confirm your own blue buff. It takes Cthulhu such a long time to try and clear the big minion at that point. It seems to me like Scream is going to have to help out over in that solo lane a fair bit. Do you like the Cthulhu right now in the meta when so much healing is prominent, like the Guan Yu, like the Yamoja, for example?
Yeah, so Cthulhu sort of has a built-in win condition in his ultimate, as I'm sure you're all familiar. He pretty much has to win the team fight as soon as he goes up into that ultimate. And like you said, that's going to be bad against things like healing unless you can win in the cast of that ultimate during its duration. So it does kind of put a little bit of a tab on how the Dragons do have to play this game. I would say more or less they do like playing that way regardless, where they kind of win the team fight in the first 5 to 10 seconds. So it kind of does nod to their play style. I'm sure Alec is comfortable in his matchup against the Guan Yu as well. If he's going to be picking that Cthulhu this early, it does kind of give away some flex picks now. You know that the Cthulhu is going to solo lane, so that's something interesting to note as well.
So that's something clear that I think you're right to highlight. The Jade Dragons want to make sure the Descent into Madness gets the most value that you can, and then after that ultimate, hopefully the fight has been won at that point, right? You're looking to get that win and get out. The Cupid, something that has been used time and time again, this big team fight presence, Fields of Love, so highly contested, so I think a smart ban there to take away from the Jade Dragons, rather Panda Cat, not going to be able to go to that one, and looks like the Jade Dragons are taking Cuvo Fred's Hunbots off the mark for now. I mean, with getting Scream something like Pele being able to come out swinging, I think it is definitely smart to try and focus out Cuvo and limit some of that pressure that he can go for, because Pele, lots of single target damage, farms the map quite well, whereas Hunbat's pretty much the complete opposite. Decent farm, but your team fight presence. You are clicking Fear No Evil, hopefully on 5 members, getting beats down. It's just a completely different swing. So I like the bans on both sides there. It really just depends on, can Cuvo match the pressure of the Pele, and taking away Nemesis as well. I was going to say, that is another pick that you can go for to try and farm the map as quickly as possible. So very clear plans for both of these squads, with the Jade Dragons focusing out Cuvo in this second wave of bans, and the Oni Warriors trying to get rid of some of Panda Cat's effectiveness on the Cupid and the Chiron respectively. But now it's time to see what the Oni Warriors are going to grab in this slot. You know, I haven't even mentioned the fact that there has been a bit of E-set flex potential, but it looks like it's going to be staying in Dartez's hands because he loves this pick and is so well on it. It looks like the Artemis will be coming through, and Pandacat's not going to be able to play that one because the Oni Warriors are going to grab that one over for vote.
Yeah, I mean, the Warriors have really got a death ball comp rolling up here with this Khepri, this E-set, this Guan Yu, and this Artemis. If I'm the Dragons, I don't want to be taking any group team fights into that team comp. They just have so many problematic spells, you know, with the Khepri Revive ultimate, the E-set ultimate, the Guan Yu heals, especially with those hoops that we've all come to hate now, as it's so effective, and that Artemis ult now too. So the Warriors have really drafted a crazy team fighting composition here. So I'm interested to see how the Dragons will respond.
I see what they're hovering.
Yeah, is it gonna be? Are we doing this again? Is it happening again?
This looks to me like the Pagon Pele, perhaps, if it does get locked in. You know what? Well, I won't speculate until it is actually locked in. But at the moment, already extremely tanky draft here for the Jade Dragons, right? The Kabrakan and the Cthulhu is going to facilitate quite well for the Pele. They obviously need something for Pandacat in the backline, some ADC of sorts, and the Ishtar has been, you know, pretty successful. Cyclone's been played for the first time last game, and he looked quite well doing it. The shotgun auto attacks bring a ton of objective shred. So I guess at this point, any hunter will do, but I am very curious as to what, you know, the Atlas Hummer could be. It looks like they will be switching over and say, Scream, you can take the Pele. We're going to grab the Vulcan for Pagon in the mid lane. I believe just locking in Pandacat's 101st game of Hou Yi. I don't have the stats open, but we just discussed that Pandacat has played 100 Hou Yi games at the very least, so a lot, very experiments on this character. He loves going for the 1v1s. He loves getting aggressive, and the Mercury, that is an extremely hit-or-miss jungler locked in the 10 slot for Cuvo. What do you think about the Mercury last pick here?
You know, I think the character is a little bit underrated, to be honest. He kind of shows up and leaves at a whim. He doesn't seem to matter, you know, what's going on balance-wise with the game. People just pick him up and put him to the side, you know, just as quickly as he comes. But when you're not used to playing against a Mercury ultimate, I think is when he's the most effective. So if the Dragons haven't played against a Mercury in a while, they might have trouble tracking him on the map. He might have some more successful ganks because of that. Once again, I do think the Warriors comp has kind of rounded out to be a kind of a team fighting monster type comp, one that I would personally not like to play against.
Yeah.
But that's not how the Dragons play. They run it down and they run their lanes and they execute on their game plan. They show up to the objectives first. So if that's the case, I don't think the Dragons will have problems. If they fall behind, I do think they could be in for a hard game.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the W key style play that the Jade Dragons are going for, because to me the Oni Warriors look like they're playing for late game, right? They have Artemis, they have Mercury, they want to get rage stacks, they want to go and get Cuvo online for late where he's just one-shotting these carries. Do you think that the Oni Warriors have drafted a composition that can get these hard carries in the Artemis and the Mercury till late game, or do you think the Jade Dragons just have overwhelming early pressure?
Well, the Dragons, if anyone, are going to be the ones, you know, carrying that overwhelming early pressure, and I think it's very possible that that might happen. That being said, they do have the Khepri, which is that, like, bailout ultimate.
Right.
So if people are caught out of position, if they are kind of getting overdove, they do have that as a response. So hopefully, you know, the Warriors and Neil Ma on this Khepri can use that to kind of get that team to that late game scenario, get that team to the point where they're super strong. But it's really just going to be all based on execution.
Yeah, so a lot of weight on Neil Ma to make sure those Scarab's blessings are going to be on point. And, you know, looking at this composition again, Hou Yi, I don't think is going to have the worst matchup into Mercury, right? I think whenever I think of Mercury, I think of going behind the tower, looking for long lane and trying to find those 1v1s. If your jumps are on point, you should be able to avoid that, but Pandacat is not one to sit back. He's not one to play underneath the tower. Pandacat likes to get aggressive in your face and look for 1v1 trades. So that's going to be interesting to see if he can dial that back, recognizing that, hey, Cuvo hasn't been on the map for a while. Is there going to be a sonic boom running down my lane? I was going to say, do we talk about the duo pressure, but it looks like we don't have to wait any further. We're ready to jump into game here with J-Mac and Gormizer.
Thank you so much, Trelly and Hurrywin on the desk. Good job to Trelly for his first desk host officially of the SPL. Did a good job. Round of applause to him. But it's the Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors in our first game, and it's already starting out with a little bit of fighting just over at least on the left side of those mid camps. The Jade Dragons coming off of a 10-set streak of wins. I got to stretch that they are wins so far. I've had some game drops in the midst, and the Oni Warriors are looking to be the first team to dethrone them and keep it at just a tied record, if I'm not mistaken, for most set wins in a row for the SPL, Gore.
Yes, keep it tied where it's at and in control, right? Make sure that, honestly, and if you're a Dragons fan, maybe give them a loss before, like, so that they have something a little before Worlds. to make sure that it's not just going to have to be this wild streak
Do they know?
until the
Okay,
beginning.
now
They have to know.
They knew.
They
Yeah, okay.
have to know.
Okay, Neil knows now for sure. He's still going to go for it, though. PBM invade early, has the tremors. It's going to be a very slow Cabrakan whenever it's all said and done. Neilma has Hog, though. So all of that was just for nothing for Mike. A good little catch out there by Neil. We've been seeing so many of these invades as of recent towards purple buff. And it's finally, you know, I'm going to say it. It's finally time that we see somebody actually counteract against it.
Well, it is that problem, right? So the first spawn of all of these jungle camps is a little easier to kill than all of the others. It's a bunch of minis, right? A lot easier to burn through than it is the second wave when they spawn, have the big minion. So in a way, this honestly, like you said, it's not much for Mike. If anything, it's beneficial for Panda Cat. Look, he's already level 2. He gets the purple buff experience. He's Ho-Yi, so he can clear it on his own. And so at the end of the day, yeah, Mike falls a little behind. But it's a win, sort of lose, right? Because if you get it, cool. You get a purple buff, you strip some experience away. If you don't, Panda Cat gets a whole camp of experience to himself, gets to level up first, and ideally that means giving a little more control over to your side of the lane anyway.
In fact, I believe 2 camps entirely to Panda Cat. Ricochet's not on a long cooldown either, so can clear out the green, clear out the purple, and even get the Interceptor. So early pressure does go towards the Jade Dragons with this Cabrakan Ho-Yi combo. 101st game as highlight on the desk for Panda Cat to play this guy. Did you happen to remember the win rate that he had for those 100-some-odd games?
61%? Or it was either 61 or 67?
Oh, one of the two.
Because I remember there being a line in the second column. I think 61, though.
So at least 61 of his games of the 100 that he has played has been a victory on this guy. We'll see if he can add one more to the column as Mike is going for the ever-annoying full-duration Tremor to lock Vote and Neilma down. Getting some good damage, but Mike is pulled back, and he doesn't have backup. Has the stun. Ricochet off the mark by Panda Cat. The Rising Dawn, not quite enough damage to take down Mike. That mitigation in his passive coming in big to make sure he doesn't go down.
Now Interceptor giving him, again, just a little bit, but enough to push back up against those minions. Mike is just going to be able to pop some of the pots that we heard and heal back up, no problem.
Fight for the blue, stolen by Scream. Nika going to be a little bit mana hungry for a while on that Guan Yu, and that is not a fun god to lose your blue buff on.
How is it? It's week 2 of phase 3, and it feels weird almost to see Scream in the jungle because of what they've been doing with their whole swap. Granted, since there was no Atlas, they didn't lock it in. That makes a little more sense. I'm excited to watch him on the Pele as well. I think this is a god that just kind of feels very Scream to me, if that makes any sense. We've seen what Lazarus been able to do on this pick over the last couple of weeks. Very, very good at getting in deep. But a lot of it is dependent, and you can see it here, on that blink. We had talked about it, I think, the other day. A Pele that started with beads, and it's like, well, you are very telegraphed now. Everybody knows what you're going to do. But with this, blink in, get a knock up. Once you have your ult, then you can ult for the follow-up. A lot of good damage, and I expect to see it do pretty well. And honestly, up against something like an ESET, it should be pretty easy to get some of those lockdowns. Might have to worry about the Mercury beside her, but as long as Mercury's either not there or dealt with prior, that's going to be an easy enough kill.
I'm looking over at Fine OK. Tainted Steel, something that's not uncommon when you're going up against some healers. Cthulhu, kind of go back and forth on his starters. It's that first actual item beyond the starters that I'm kind of looking at. And we can, now that there is no fight happening in mid, we can kind of talk about this. Into the lifesteal tree, you think this is going to be Pythagoras piece picked up by Fine OK?
Man, that wouldn't be a bad pickup. I'm wondering if he's going to go for the Bancroft's Claw, though, because we've seen so much of it. I don't know if it works well on Cthulhu. I'm going to be honest, because I've never tried, but the Pythagoras, that one's one that's helpful because it helps everybody, right? Because if you think about it, Pagon's going to be able to benefit from that. Well, technically everybody will, right? Scream, PBM, Panda. But I think that it will give more of a benefit to them. It gives you enough tanky stats that it feels all right in that kind of position. You're a Guardian, so you've still got decent scaling. And Nika's playing Guan Yu, so he's going to strip your prots anyway, so maybe you want something heavier a little later on. But at least for as far as lanes go, and in terms of keeping yourself in the ability to clear and match the output of a Guan Yu, I think it'd be a really good pickup. Or a fun pickup.
Would be fun.
We'll see if it's really good in a second.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes as the game progresses forward at least. Another blue buff steal by Scream. Second one in a row that he's made his rotation over towards. So second and third spawn of the blue have both gone to the Jade Dragons on the Warrior side of the map. It will now be at least another blue buff over for Fine OK on his side. So stealing away the XP from Nika, continuing to keep the Guan Yu starving of those mana problems. Good news for Nika is he is building into those earrings, so he's got at least a little bit of assistance in that regard. But as far as the mid lane is concerned, their builds are going to be pretty much matching what we have been seeing. We've seen a little diversity with the mid laners. We've seen some go to things like Do More. We've seen with the Merlins instead starting more towards Flat Pen. But it seems that at least for Pagon, for Dardes, they're going to be keeping this Warlock staff going. And this kind of story that was brought up by at least the desk, which is Oni Warriors typically wanting to scale a little bit later. ESEC going to be good around objectives. Hurl's going to do a lot of damage late game. Artemis, Mercury definitely want to get to that point. And they were talking about how the Jade Dragons are probably going to have to be the team to get the ball rolling early to try and pull that lead. Do you think that with a pick like Vulcan and with a build like a Warlock staff, it's going to be able to help him do so?
I mean, like, he's got great scaling numbers, right? So you know he's going to be able to burst really hard later on. I think this is going to, I don't even know if slow him down is the right way. I feel like base Vulcan abilities hit hard enough to make sure that he's going to be potent. Okay, it is the Pythags, by the way. I was sitting here and I started looking at Soul Gem just to see because I was like, what if? Like, is it even worthwhile? Is that even a question for them, for the Cthulhu? But yeah, no, the Pythags, it's still interesting, right? The health makes the most sense out of anything on here. Cooldown reduction's always nice. Lifesteal is not something, I'm going to be honest with you, if I think Cthulhu, magical lifesteal is not like the place that my mind immediately goes to. What? And so, you know, again, and the passive playing into that is interesting to me. A lot of the other stats working out well for him. The health bar is maybe the one that I think I'd keep my eyes on the most. But everything else on there is a net benefit, right? Nothing about it's going to be bad. You now get some healing that you otherwise wouldn't have had.
Well, Vote, dove into the tower, can scream, find first blood. My goodness, the burst damage of the Pele and 100 HP left to his name. Vulcan ult from downtown. Whew. Will not steal the Scorpion or hit Cuvo Fred. PBM will have to blink away, but first blood goes to the Jade Dragons. A sonic boom by Cuvo Fred will grab PBM, throw him in to the ultimate by Dardes, but not enough damage just yet. Instead, now it's Final K showing up to help out, but it's too little too late for the support of the Dragons.
Yeah, I really like the idea from the Dragons to have that rotation come through, try to get something rolling, and even with Sonic Boom not getting the stun, right? A lot of ults invested from the Warriors, so you feel like maybe it's worthwhile for them. I think if they had been able to strip the beads off of Dardes on top of all of that other stuff, then Mike is screaming worth no matter what, right? Even if he goes down, it's not the end of the world. Really good turnaround, good stun for him. It was just not going to work out with the ult already being down for the Vulcan.
Now it's just bully mode for Panda Cat. He does have a few archers that are stopping him from getting the kill.
Uh-oh.
Does he have the fancy bounce to get the kill on Vote? Maybe he doesn't need it. Mike will set him up, and Mike will take the kill away from him. 90% of the work to Panda Cat. The last 10% is where PBM profits.
Look, sometimes that's what you need, though. Because does Panda Cat get that kill if Mike doesn't walk up? Maybe after a long, drawn-out run, you know, he's going to have to dash, use a little more mana, invest heavily in trying to chase that down, versus Mike just walking up and going, okay, cool, smack, they're good. I got them. Don't worry about it. And I think that's, again, just good presence from the team. Good communication from them to be able to pick that up, and awesome just timing from Mike, because if he doesn't die, if he takes, what, a second longer to die or respawns maybe a second earlier, well, they probably just get it somewhere else if he respawns earlier. Either way, gets there just in time to cut him off. And is going to showcase, I think, why we see a lot of this Cabrakan ban, because it's this Manticore spike that has been part of the reason I think that has just escalated him up and towards the top. I think on top of that, Trimmers is on a low cooldown, really good CC. And that's not just from Trimmers. I mean, on his 2, on his 1, he's just got nothing but good CC. We've seen so many good Ymir walls and Cabrakan walls throughout this year, and I think that's going to come into play as well from Mike. So I'm really going to keep my eyes on him, because even though that death doesn't go his way, I think that he's got to level up on Neil. He's been very present for a lot of these fights and in a lot of stuns, looking for work wherever it can happen. I have a good feeling that he's going to be kind of a harbinger for his team.
Ult for ult. Panda Cat 3 levels up. Well, 2 now that Vote has finally ticked over towards 8. And this is just what we're going to see for the remainder of the game. As long as Vote is still in lane, going to be pressure going that direction. Spirit Ball connects. Pagon will backfire away. And the Trebuchet will slowly poke out. Oh, actually didn't manage to clear the way with that one. So ultimate from Pagon is good. Neil Ma. Quarter HP in the back. Zoned away from this purple buff yet again. More experience just in general. While the Dragons haven't gotten a lot of kills, it's 2-1 as far as the board is concerned. This is the, what, third, fourth buff that we have seen the Dragons invade successfully and steal away from the Warriors.
And you have to see how that's translated into, like, the experience, I think, is maybe the biggest tell. That's 2 levels over there for the carry, and may I find more.
Good I don't know why I'm surprised at Pele damage anymore, because that's twice now I've seen it just full combo of one person.
There was, I don't know if you remember this. It's just fun to poke fun at aggro sometimes. There was a period of time where he just said, yeah, aggro doesn't burst. And Mifflin held on to that for 6 straight months. He might still hold on to it, I don't know. And every time I see something like that happen, that's what I hear in my mind. Because sometimes you miss, and I think that one was a miss. I mean, that was an absolute erasure. I mean, Scream just comes in, again, very, very quick damage, quick succession, and showcases exactly the combo that you need. It is knock up into ult, into smack smack, they're dead. And maybe it's not one single ability, immediate amount of damage burst, but when you get it in the right hands and in the right moment with that amount of control, it's going to kill pretty much anybody on the other side.
So that's 2 kills for Scream. 1 on the left side of the map, 1 on the right side. Kill for Mike with the courtesy of Panda Cat from earlier, so put Vote down 2.5 levels. Hasn't even, barely got to halfway point of stacking his Transcendence. And this is now kind of pushing along the storyline of the desk, which is the Dragons are a W key team. They are going to run it down. While they might not be getting a lot of kills, they have been invading a ton of buffs, keeping some away from Nika, keeping some away from Vote on this Artemis, who has been struggling. Basically, any time that Vote has stepped out of the tower line, Panda Cat has dove on top of him, dropped the ult regardless if he thinks he's going to get the kill, and is forcing Vote to make these really awkward decisions. Do I ult just so I can walk away? Do I pop my 2 and run as far away as I can, or do I try and fight? It's kind of been a little of all of them for Vote so far.
Yeah, there's not a lot of opportunities, I think, early game as an Artemis to be as hands-on as maybe Vote needs to be for the way, I mean, just the way the Dragons play, right? It's not a, oh, the Warriors are going to play slow. No, the Dragons are going to play fast. They're going to play at you fast no matter what you're trying to do. Your comp, if you're the Warriors, fits your style. Cuvo gets to farm for a little while, can be hands-on, can also sit back and just steal some jungle buffs, things like this, where he can play aggressive, he can play passive. Either way, late game, he's a Mercury, right? Same thing for Vote. You can play a little aggressive, Tusky, trap, things like that really helpful, but you can also play a little more passive, stay back, try to stay safe. I think that this is a really great scaling comp, plus you've got a lot of secure and teamfight potential around the circle protection. I just think the Dragons are going to play at you no matter what, and so this first 12 minutes, you just have to hope it doesn't get too out of control.
Good double CC. 1 from Neil, 1 from Dardes. Sonic
Ooh.
Boom. Clips through 3 different players along the way there. Pagon makes it out because of the help of Panda Cat. The bounce, insane. The damage, unreal. And Neil Ma barely lives with a sliver of HP and a Scarab's Blessing to keep him alive through there. What an ult by Cuvo Fred, but what a better turnaround by Panda Cat.
Look, PBM taking a little bit of damage, but this is just such a good amount of control. What a massive shot from Pagon.
Scream finds the double during it all. Pagon with the ultimate from downtown takes half of Dardes' health, and a tier 1 tower after. Jade Dragons are running the show.
And so I'll say it again, they're gonna play at you at their speed, whether or not you've got a comp for it. And I think this is one that, while it could hold its own early on, you're up against Pele Cabrakan, man. Like, good luck. They are always going to be running you down. And Scream, again, with the blink, with the ult, timing, placement, all of it. It just kind of lines up into a good spot for the Pele. Now, what, 2 levels up over Cuvo Fred? That feels amazing. Not quite as good as the 3 levels Panda Cat has managed to pick up. And so you had straight up called it bullying earlier on. That's pretty much what's still going on. It's just now they've been able to kind of siphon it. It's not just in the duo lane. Vote's been safe because everybody else on the Warriors has been the target for the Dragons. And when Pagon is able to hit an ult like that, which most of the time it's going to be Aegis. Most of the time it's not going to connect. Something is going to cause that damage to not be there. But if it does, then that just makes it even easier for him.
No ward coverage from the Dragons. They don't know that Cuvo and Dardes are here. Fury is low. Fury does get secured by the Dragons, but Dardes is able to pick up 1. Maybe a second one on a Panda Cat. Does he have his leap to get out of here? No, he does not. It's a Sonic Boom from Cuvo Fred. 2 erased from the Dragons, and PBM will likely be the 3rd. Stuck in the middle of all 5. Finds a double stun, but gets stunned himself by the Cavalry, and all he can do is tremor until he is gone. 3 for the Oni Warriors, even though they lose the gold. Great triple pick.
Yeah, it's a really good pickup for him, specifically getting Panda Cat, right? The experience lead, the gold lead he had in that lane. I mean, we were just talking about Cuvo being down 2 levels. I'm going to call it half a level because we just saw Scream tick up to 15. Same thing there for Vote, still technically down 2, but that's better than the 3 that it was. Closes a lot of gaps, gets them some of the bounties, closes the lead the Dragons were building, and like you said, helps nullify that Fury that they just picked up. So a really great play for him to get aggressive, and that's not even highlighting, I think, the most important thing on the board for me. A lot of relics still up for the Warriors, and 3 rage stacks that are now sitting happily there for Cuvo, right? It's a really good start, but I think we've seen it this year where Mercury, came in, got an early rage, into the game without a single stack on there. And so being able to get those available to your team, make sure that that you personally are starting to make your impact known. I think this is going to be a good conversation. Definitely one that the Warriors are still going to have to be wary of, right? It doesn't give them the lead, but it does showcase they can fight.
Damage through from Neil to try and steal Pyro, but not enough. Jade Dragons will grab that one. And I think that now opens the eyes of the Jade Dragons. They thought they had a clean and easy objective to take and didn't have a single ward covering the backside for them. Didn't have anything coming from the pit. Didn't have anything from exactly where that red ward is standing right there. And so I'm sure the Jade Dragons are now a little bit more wary of their surroundings when the next time comes that they have to take down this objective. So we'll have to see if an objective can be stolen away again by the Oni Warriors. A good start for them to kind of rise back in this game, because this 5,500 gold lead from the Jade Dragons needed to plateau at some point. Now is the best time for it to do so that way the Warriors can start really getting their fight back. Yeah,
you've got a few minutes where there's not going to be another large infusion of gold unless the Dragons get a Tier 2 tower, right? 500 gold, I guess, is still nice from either of the Tier 1s that are still standing, but really this is the point to try and get your hand back on the wheel. Like you said, not only in map control, I think ward vision is very important, whether it's over here on left, which since it's going to spawn first in about 2.5 minutes, should be for this Oni Fury. But also making sure that things don't get so out of hand, because if the Dragons win another team fight, they get a pick 2, maybe pick 3. That's a Fire Giant, right? And it might be early. I mean, we're only 17 minutes in, but the Dragons have enough gold, and I think enough burn with Secure as well from Pagon to make sure that that goes their way. It just depends on the picks, when they get them, where they get them. If they can live through it.
Sonic Boom doesn't find a home. Cuvo Fred will continue the dive. Scares Blessing, gets Pock, but Pagon's got an ultimate of his own. Doesn't find anything there, but Final K is here. And in the middle of 5, a fully transformed and angry Cthulhu will take out Cuvo Fred. Scream has picked up the double kill under the tower. The Dragons will go, and it's a kill for Panda Cat to add in 3 gone from the Warriors, and 4 with Pagon slamming through. The only one left alive, a rather healthy Nika on the Guan Yu. But the Jade Dragons have commanded the left side fight.
Yeah, that healing helped out Nika a lot, and pretty much only Nika. Now, this is the question I had for the Dragons, and I was curious what they were going to do. Are they going to stick around? Are they going to rotate over into the map? Where is the call going to be? Because I just said you get 3. Go for a Fire Giant. They get 4. I have to imagine they're just making a beeline over there. You can see Scream, Pagon, Panda walking over there slowly while they're being met by Fine OK and Mike. But they also get the Tier 1 tower. They have a wave pushed up on left. I mean, this is just really good scenario for them all across the board, because there's nothing Nika can really do about this. His ult is available, but you're going to have to try and out-secure Pagon's ult when it comes back up, and that's assuming you can even get over here.
Nika tries. Fine OK zoned him just enough for the Jade Dragons to put all 5 members of the Fire Giant buff around their waist. 18.5 minutes in, and that 5,500 gold earlier has just gone up significantly. Another 3K to the pockets of the Jade Dragons. The Tier 1 Fire Giant, 4 kills. The Oni Warriors now, Gormizer, as we start pushing kind of towards this later stage. There's only 3 Tier 2 towers left up. Do the Oni Warriors maybe make a stand at one of those towers? Do you think they just have to let them go until the Phoenixes?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think, I don't know if I want to. I think they are capable of. I don't know that I would want them to, though. I think they can step up to a Tier 2. You've got Circle of Protection and Scarab's Blessing, right? You've got a lot of healing just in those, not including what Nika's going to be bringing. I think good team fight that you could absolutely mount a defense. I just don't know that I've been convinced by some of these last defenses that I want to do it under a Tier 2. I think having the tower or a Phoenix is going to be helpful for you, and since it's still sub 20, defending under a Tier 2, they're not going to have quite the level of burn on the side of the Dragons that they would if this was like a 35-minute game, right? So you do have an advantage working for you. It's going to take a little bit while. They would need the minion wave to strip the backdoor protections off. I think that this is just a good spot to try and mount that up, but you also have to be willing to defend and admittedly fall back almost instantaneously if something goes wrong. I mean, you've got the Erendite finished for Scream. The Blink just came back up. Beads are going to be up in 20 seconds for him. All of those combined to just essentially choose one target and chase them down until they're dead. He's going to be able to pick somebody off. It's just a matter of who, and if you get caught out, whether right now, you know, you're Cuvo who's alone, Vote relatively alone but deep in the base, there's, I think, opportunities where things could just go catastrophically around a tier 2 for the Warriors.
Jade Dragons pick up the Fury. Now on their continued push in, the first tower that they're going to go for with their Fire Giant buff. 2 minutes left on the power play is going to be the tier 2 in left. This could set them up if they want to go for a Phoenix, the best one you can grab, knowing that you need to go for yet another one or yet another Fire Giant before you can end the game. Cuvo Fred doing his best to keep minions away, but not going to do so as the rest of the Dragons push in towards mid. A soft defense by the Oni Warriors. And unfortunate for Neil Mon, he's so far behind right now. Level 12 versus level 16 in the support role.
Yeah, that hurts.
Only 2 items in, doesn't even have his starter upgraded just yet because he's not at the level to do so, but does have fully upgraded relics. So at this point, for these team fights, it doesn't feel like Neil Ma can really get in and be the defensive tank that needs. It feels like he has to be purely backline peel for ultimate and with this shell.
I do like, though, the way that this team has been playing in terms of the macro, right? Because we just saw Cuvo pick up a Pyromancer. We saw some pings on the Trebuchet. They recognize that they need to defend some stuff. And I think that's kind of where their mindset is at, which is that with a Trebuchet right behind the Phoenix, they've got technically a 7th man. I don't know if you call that damage enough to be that. Let's call it like 6.2 that they're going to have in their favor. And they just need a little more time, right? This comp is a ticking time bomb that if they can keep this game going, kind of drag it on, you're still going to have a late-game Hunter in the Artemis. You're still going to have a late-game Mercury. And it takes away a little bit. Not the gold lead that the Dragons have. That's going to be something you have to play into no matter what. Experience lead, yeah, you're feeling it 8 ways to Sunday right now until you hit level 20. But you could have those moments, right? And I'm looking at Cuvo as being one of the big playmakers, looking at Dardez's ult Vote and where this engage could come from the Warriors. Luckily, I don't think it's going to have to be around this Fire Giant. Unfortunately for them, I don't think they can really defend this Fire Giant. They might be able to make a play for it. It just depends on how confident they are. If you make a play at this Fire Giant as the Warriors in about a minute, then you just have to win.
Ultimate from Mike stopped by Vote, but that's only for an extra second for him and Panda Cat and Pagon. Shoot him up and take them down. The triple P power coming from the Jade Dragons, able to get 2 picks in the left side jungle. And, well, now this should be a very easy Phoenix for the Jade Dragons. In fact, they can maybe grab even more than just the one, depending on how fast they're able to take down this one. As Final K is keeping Nika busy, Scream will join the fight as well. And with only 3 to defend, not even because Cuvo Fred's not even going to show his face, the Jade Dragons will grab a left side Phoenix for free.
And remember, Fire Giant's worn off at this point. So they get those kills, they get those beads. Are they going to go for more? I mean, they've got 15 seconds without Dardez and Vote.
Cuvo's back, though. Sonic Boom charge. Final K in the throne room. Into the back line goes Cuvo Fred. He gets the revive back, but Neil Ma is very low. Neil Ma is gone. Cuvo Fred is gone as well, and Nika, not enough damage to defend up against it. Dardez and Vote are here, but the Titan is too little, too late. 23.5 minutes off of 1 set of picks in the jungle. The Jade Dragons in this game.
That's just impressive, man. Like, I mean, the Dragons, look, that is a team that came into this, and a little bit of it is going to be like comp specific, right? When you look at this, you got a Pele who's going to be able to get aggressive really early on, a Cabrakan who's going to get aggressive really early on. And guess what the Dragons style likes to be when they play no matter what? Aggressive all the time early on. So they had a draft that played to their style, that played well, and you were playing into something that can bounce back a little bit, but Khepri takes a little bit longer to feel like he's going to be fully fleshed out, and admittedly, after a certain point, especially when you're as behind as the Warriors got, you're just kind of an ult machine, and you hope that you can save somebody who's going to do something, and unfortunately that didn't happen. ESET didn't really get to do too much that game. The Mercury, while it can fight earlier, really wanted another like 5 minutes and like an extra item or two to start getting to where you could finally 1-tap, 2-tap people. And we were close to that moment. And I think that's part of the reason the Dragons rushed that. I think that's a moment where playing it safe, you see 15 seconds, you wonder what your burn is like, and maybe you just start to fall back. They read it and they said, you know what, we can do it. Like, we got to do it, because if we don't, this prolongs to one more fight. We have to win that, get the FG. We're still in a great spot, but they start to scale a little bit better. So if we can end this now, don't even have to worry about it.
The Jade Dragons do just that. They find 2 picks on the left side. They run up the left lane, take the Phoenix, and end game number 1 in just 23.5 minutes. Impressive play by the Jade Dragons for game number 1. We'll see if they can keep that pace up in game number 2 right after.
And welcome back, Smite fans. We are here with the Jade Dragons versus the Oni Warriors. The Jade Dragons just came up 1-0, but before we jump into analyzing how that game went, I want to take a minute to tell you guys about the great jerseys that you've probably seen the pro players wearing. If you want to go to Worlds and get one of those signed, if you just want to get one of them for yourself, hang it above the mantle, they all look great. Well, thank you so much to Skulls for sponsoring us for those jerseys, and you can go check them out at shop.hi-rezstudios.com/SPL and rep your favorite team. They all look amazing. You can pick your favorite if you want to support the Jade Dragons who are winning, or the Oni Warriors. Maybe it'll help them get this back up to a 1-1 and push us to Game 3. Either one. So once again, thank you so much to Skulls for bringing us these great jerseys. But Hurrywin, I guess I'm joined with Hurrywin, first of all. Hello. We discussed before the game that it looked like the Jade Dragons had a bit of a W key composition where the Oni Warriors didn't really have the early pressure, but if they got to late game, it would look good. The Jade Dragons did not want them to get to late game, it would seem, and they sort of W-keyed from the start. That's kind of what you predicted, right?
Yeah, if you heard our analysis a bit before, I was not too optimistic on them making it to that point. I just know how the Dragons operate. They don't let team comps like that get to their point of critical mass, if you will.
Yeah.
They kind of just found opportunities in all their lanes. I think the Warriors kind of did something which I consider to be a cardinal sin. They didn't have pressure in any lanes, so they had nowhere to play through this early game. The Dragons kind of just won everywhere. As soon as something seemed to be going a little bit well for them, Alec would rotate first. And that was kind of the story of this game, whether it be, Fine OK or someone else. They just, they had control from minute 1 to minute whenever they ended, 21,
minute 1
22
to
minute
done. It seemed like the Jade Dragons were popping up. I did like the one play where Cuvo and Dardes wrapped around, killed Pagon, and won the fight after the fact. Nika made this massive rotation over, and then after that, it just seemed like it was all downhill from there. Scream got off to this fantastic start. The W key from PBM just trapping everyone in with the walls. It just seemed like the Oni Warriors did not have the DPS, did not have the wherewithal, even with the Kepri ults, the reses, that sort of thing, to try and survive the just all-out aggression from the Jade Dragon. So I like how you highlighted pretty much pressure throughout the map. I mean, Guan Yu, great pick at the moment in the meta, but it didn't seem like Nika could really rotate into these fights and make that much of a difference when everyone is so far behind at that point. So not too much. Scream and Fine OK both going undying, and a decent look at the Cthulhu. I was curious to see how it would perform since we haven't seen the Cthulhu solo in quite some time. Fine OK kind of just AFK'd in lane for a bit, and then once he started making those rotations, just massive teamfight ults from the Descent into Madness, as you would expect. That's pretty much what you pick the Cthulhu for. So as long as you're able to balance out your team comp around that. And hold up, I didn't even realize Scream actually did very low damage for that Pele, even less than Cuvo Fred in that slot. So he was kind of last hitting that game. What's up with that?
Yeah, what a bozo, honestly. That's what we call in the business a bit of a bozo move from Scream. I mean, that was value damage though. He got some pretty impactful early kills. I'd say about half that damage came from those first 2 kills that we watched in lanes. He just evaporated those guys.
Okay, so because the Pele went off to such a great start, 6-0, didn't do too much damage. Do you think the Oni Warriors think about taking that away or grabbing it for Cuvo? Because we know Cuvo loves this Pele as well. The Mercury looked fine. We got some raid stacks online, but would you prioritize banning that or maybe not?
I would probably get rid of the cab with some of the picks that they were picking.
Okay.
The cab seemed to be too much of an issue for something that they plan to let through as a first pick. So hopefully they have a plan for that this time, in my opinion. I think the Dragons have plenty of other stuff in their other roles, but I think the cab and the support roles a little too deadly right now.
All right, we'll have to see if that's something the Oni Warriors prioritizing getting rid of in picks and bans for game number 2. The AMC still being taken away. Again, the Jade Dragons being in first pick, they get to target ban. They get to take away all the stuff that we know that the Oni Warriors want to grab. Last time, the Daji, the Morgan, these were things that the Jade Dragons did not want the Oni Warriors having. And the Warriors were sticking to those meta-style bans. The Kabrakan that you were calling for, still available, but I imagine could be something to take away, just trying to limit some of what PBM was able to do in that support role, just being able to facilitate the whole map. This time, Hades and Yamoja were taken off. Last time, the last ban was Hades. So that tells me maybe, just because they switched up the order of those 2 bans, it's possible that the Oni Warriors are taking away something different in that slot.
Yeah, so they are switching it up. They are going to switch to the Pele, so that was a good call that they considered that to be the biggest issue. This also leaves the Ymir open that I believe they banned last time, so maybe they're going to be looking to take that away. Curious enough, the Dragons actually grabbed the Naja over either of those 2 support picks. I suppose they figure they'll just grab one or the other.
Yeah.
Warriors could technically take both. I don't know that that's something they'd be looking to do here, and it's not going to be, so I'm not too surprised about that. Cupid being available. a meta pick that we've been seeing a lot lately. Not too surprised to see the Warriors pick that one up. Now back to Jade Dragons for their next second and third pick.
I do like the grab Naja in that setup. They prioritize it so much, as you said. You guys can have Ymir, we'll get Kabrakan, or maybe we'll take Kabrakan, you get Ymir, either one at that point. But every time I see this Naja grabs, I got to bring up that Final K tweet, and we talked to him in an interview where he says like, yeah, we let Scream play the Naja, but he's definitely the fifth best Naja on the team. Like, he's the worst Naja on the team. And actually, they put him behind Cherio as well. So, sixth best Naja on the team. We'll have to see if Pagon decides to take that or hand it on over to Scream in the jungle. That is still yet to be seen. But notably, because the Oni Warriors were able to ban away that Pele, they can prioritize picking up their jungle beforehand and not letting this Hunbats get banned away like it was in game number 1. So, giving a lot of team fight presence. I'm seeing a lot of big circles on the side of the Oni Warriors, right? You can't miss Shards of Ice. I mean, you can, but it's pretty difficult. Fields of Love is always going to get value, and whenever the Fear No Evil's landing, you should be getting some relics down.
Yeah, no, it's pretty clear to me now that the Warriors definitely value their team fight ultimates higher than maybe some of the other teams. They just need to get there. So I hope, the rest of their picks, and they have the Ymir this time around. The Humbots isn't necessarily high pressure, but they've kind of got the beginnings or the inner workings of kind of having more pressure than they at least did the last game. So hopefully they can make it to that team fight stage this game. I am thinking this Naja is probably going to Pagon. If I have any kind of good read on what they've been doing lately, if I were the Warriors, maybe I would consider even banning the Atlas.
Banning the Atlas, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's just too much of a mental breaker to have to ban that one away from Scream. But I think it's a good consideration after what we saw last time from it.
Yeah, it's possible that they have every indication that Atlas is coming, but they're like, are we going to be the guys that ban the Atlas mid? Like, is that what we've fallen for? We're undefeated right now. We're the only other team without a loss in the column against the Jade Dragons, and we're thinking about banning that Atlas. So I think a good shot there. It is certainly possible that Pagon takes that Naja. I wouldn't be surprised if at the moment it's up in the air who's having it, and just we'll see how the bans come through, and we'll see if that team comp does rear its head. At the moment, though, team fight presence being taken away from the Oni Warriors. I like the E settle. We know that Dardes had a decent performance on it. It was sort of ran through, but any mid lane mage, when you're that far behind, is going to get killed extremely easy. So smart ban there from the Dragons, and the Oni Warriors really using some time to think about this one. Do they want to, ban away that Atlas, or maybe just take away, a possible safety pick, something that deals with the Yu Huang pretty well? And it looks like the call is to take away King Arthur, deal with some of that pressure that Final K would be able to bring out. And actually, Dardes is Hera getting a respect ban in that last slot, so Dardes is not going to be able to play that one. Doesn't play too often, but when he does, it looks pretty decent.
Yeah, what does Dardes go for in this position? If I were to look at it, I'd assume maybe he just defaults something like a Merlin. Maybe he plays another Hunter mid, something like that. Maybe there's a god I'm forgetting about, but I'm not really sure what I think of when I think of Dardes when I see all of these picks banned away. The AMC, the Morgan, the ESET now, and the Hera. I'm not really sure what he goes to next, but I do think he needs to be having his head on a swivel here because he doesn't know what he's going to be against. It could even be a Naja mid for all we know. So maybe they hold him for last pick, and they will do that, which I think is a smart decision, seeing as we don't know where everything's going yet on the Jade Dragons. Going back to the Dragons, though, I think they have a few options here. I would say that, at this point, I think the Atlas is a good call. I think it's good into something like the Ymir, who's immobile, because it's easy to just drop your ult on him. It's hard for him to get out. You can get a lot of damage on him, and he can kind of become a win condition early on by just being an easy tank that has a tough time to get away. An easy tank to just kind of kill and lock down early. So I would like the Dragons to go back towards this Atlas strategy if it's something that they consider to be a serious strategy. But they obviously have a lot of options.
Yeah, they do have some options here, and I like the way the Oni Warriors have drafted as well, just in the sense of, they had the Ymir, they had the Cupid, they had Hunbats. We were both discussing, what does Dardes go to? Well, if we grab the RDO, that's some extra magic defense, or magic damage rather, so we still could pivot into the double Hunter. We know that Dardes loves playing Hunters in the mid lane, has played the Chernobog, has played even the On-Her, for example, so there's a lot of different Hunters that Dardes could still go to in that slot, or just go to something that's been working decently well, like the Discordia, for example. If you want to just go for some big CC and that passive could help out the rest of the team, Dardes has options. But now the Jade Dragons are finally going to have to tell us, what's following up on this Najao. At the moment, Panda Cat doesn't rotate out of lane until late game, so someone's going to have to be following this up, some sort of big burst damage, or maybe, channeled burst damage, if you will, because again, that Atlas still available. Grabbing the Kakolan for Final K, however, that is a pick that he does like to go to a lot, and the Zeus is going to be locked in. I mean, that is not something I would have expected, and also not something that appears to have a great matchup into the Ymir, the Cupid, the Hunbats. You're going to have to hold on to your relics in this composition.
Yeah, I think that's for Scream.
You think so?
I think that's for Scream. I saw him playing it on stream.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Zeus is not really a Pagon god in my opinion either. I think there's a solid chance Scream is going mid on the Zeus here. Call me crazy.
I'm not going to call you crazy because at this point, anytime I see a pick and someone goes, that's for Scream, I'm like, I don't even have to look. You're probably right. So the possibility is certainly there. For you, is there, because you said it's not a Pagon pick, would you prefer Scream on the jungle, or Scream on the Najah, or Pagon on the Zeus? Do you think there's any difference at that point? Like, what would be the benefit of putting Scream on the Zeus in mid, just because you've seen him play it recently?
Well, they've shown they can play the roles, and I think they're both, like, respectively more comfortable on those characters. So I think it only makes logical sense to me. That is what I'm expecting. And also, Dardes, I'm assuming the Kernanos is for Dardes. I suppose it could go either way with the Cupid going mid as well, but I assume it will be Kernanos for Dardes. So glad I wasn't too far off on assuming he's going to get forced to a Hunter mid. I think it is a good solution to the pressure they ran into last game. We'll see if it does help out and if they're able to kind of survive this Dragon onslaught that came in game 1.
So there's a lot of immobile characters in the sense of they can't get away from the Cabrakan walls. You know, the Cupid is really not going to enjoy that. RDO, of course, Ymir is going to be immobile, and the CERN. It was the same sort of style of draft last time where ESET was consistently getting stuck and, you know, the ganks on Artemis, that sort of thing. Do you think that the Oni Warriors have drafted themselves a composition that can deal with PBM's aggressive play style on this Cabrakan well? Or do you think the plan is still, let's get to late game and we just won't care about that?
I think it's going to come down a lot to the first 5 minutes of this dual lane. I think whoever comes on top of that dual lane matchup is going to be the ones kind of running it. You know, is the Ymir going to be running at the Cabrakan, or is the Cabrakan going to be running at the Ymir? And I think that really depends on who's getting the Scepter, who's winning in this early dual lane aggression. That might come down to some early jungle rotations, maybe even mid rotations. But I think that's ultimately what it's going to come down to.
Okay, so whoever is getting that dual lane pressure, then that could facilitate whether Neilma on the Ymir or PBM on the Cabrakan. Looking at the team fights, we already highlighted the Oni Warriors seem to be valuing their team fight. The Hunbats, for example, they were looking for these big team fight ultimates, not single target picks. You can use it that way, but more often than not, going for that 5v5. But then the Jade Dragons round out their draft with the Zeus. That's a ton of AoE damage as well. Is there an edge in the team fight here? If both teams go even at like level 20, are you giving an edge to one 5v5 for either side?
I'd actually say they're pretty evenly matched. I think these Ymir walls late game could be a bit of an issue. But I do think the Zeus will match that AoE presence that you mentioned that the Warriors already had. And I think it's going to be pretty close. I'm a Zeus fan. So I'm going to give it to the Zeus.
All right.
I think the Zeus is going to take it home.
So we're going to see the Zeus juice in game for number 2. Can the Oni Warriors push us to game number 3? Or is it going to be a quick 2-0 for the Jade Dragons? Let's push it one more time to J-Mac and Gore.
Thank you so much, Trelly and Hurry over on the desk. Zeus has made his return for the Jade Dragons. We're out to see if that one's going over to Pagon, or if Hurrywin was right on the money and said it was going to Scream.
I looked.
And he was right on the money, and it's going over to Scream in the jungle. So Zeus jungle, quote unquote, probably going to actually be Scream playing Zeus in mid, like we've seen what Pagon then were doing with Atlas and gods like the Najah that Pagon was piling. It's J-Mac, it's Gore, it's Doug. One more time in game number 2. Is this just going to be a thing the Dragons do every set? They win game 1 convincingly. They decide game 2, yeah, we're gonna let Scream have some mid lane fun.
Maybe. I think best time to do it, right? Game 2, you're already up 1. If you win this game, then it's successful. You lose this game, you have a chance to go back to whatever it is that you think is going to win you even more. I don't know how to talk about this one, if I'm going to be honest with you. I guess I can just talk about Zeus in general, because I don't think I have. And I'm going to, like this one, a mental database, any log of Scream on Zeus, at least competitively. Like Hurry said, he's played it on stream a couple of times. So maybe it's just the way he wants to play. Immobile God, lots of damage. Man, I kind of ruined it by going too fast there. I should have said that in more words, because that's really what Zeus is, Immobile God. But he does a lot of damage. And I think this is going to be something that is both beneficial and disruptive to him. Because if you think about it, you are, like Trelly said, going to need your relics. You have freezes, you have Fear No Evil, roots, mezzes, anything you can think of that's just going to lock you down on the other side. And Zeus has, I'm going to double check it, the beats to help keep him alive and damage, right? The other alternative to that is if you can't escape him, kill him. And so if they get off to a lead, I think he's going to look fine. it's that if that is maybe going to be the big question. Was really, really popular earlier this year. Didn't do too bad then. Maybe can do something similar, but the Book of the Dead build isn't really there anymore. So he's going to have to change something. And there's a lot that can target him and make things a little more awkward.
I will say, it feels like PBM is doing everything he can to bring an invade meta back. You know, he was one of the not really the pioneer, but definitely one of the big influencers of the invade meta a few seasons back. Then we got Invader's Curse, so that pretty much completely
If he makes it to the green buff, I'll believe he's making it back.
He did. He literally was at the enemy green buff.
He was. If he takes the enemy green buff, I'll believe it's back.
I think if it weren't for the fact that Vote stuck around as long as he did, he probably would have stolen the green buff. He actually denied Vote the entire experience bar of that green buff for the time. Panda Cat got the green, but didn't get purple because Neil invaded the purple buff.
Yeah. That's just going to be unfortunate for them. I think that this is a spot that not only does it give good advantage over to the Warriors, I mean, I think even just draft-wise they have an advantage, right? Just blanket statement. 4/5 of what the Dragons have is going to be really solid. And that's the other thing about this, right? A lot of what I've said does assume that Scream is going to be under fire. And I am curious, you know, what goes through, how their stratagems are discussed. Because Hurry said it best. Zeus is not a Pagon god. I think if Zeus is in meta, Pagon will probably pop with it and look good on it. But I think that in general, not the kind of god that I typically think of if I'm thinking of what kind of style does Pagon bring to the mid lane. And so if they can keep this going, then they end up in this really weird area where not only are they doing something that actually is, from our perspective, I think really exciting, because that's so wild to just have someone step out of their lane, or in this case, I guess, into a lane as well, to make something, a swap like this happen. But then if Scream has a completely different god pool, it really does give so much access to the Dragons mid lane, regardless of meta. Granted, you're still going to need someone who plays those meta picks, but it kind of showcases things. And then there's also the joke I said, I think, during Waiting Room, which is this is Pagon training himself so that he can take a jungle spot, in the inevitability that as a mid laner for the Dragons, you're going to get kicked.
Your shelf life is usually very short. You're limited to a year, usually, whenever you're with the Dragons. So it could be interesting. Level 5 for Cuvo Fred, not for Pagon. Beads gone from the Naja. Good damage out of Cuvo. Not enough to find a kill, though. So we'll be ult for Beads. That ult will be up a little bit sooner, at least for Cuvo Fred, than the Beads will be for Pagon in the jungle. It's Beads for everybody, actually, except for PBM, the only one who didn't put a little bit of respect towards the Fear No Evil that Cuvo has.
Man, I can't stop thinking about this Zeus. I'm sorry. I even got up. I took the mic off last time, and I was like, man, that wasn't that great. Now all I can do is focus in on Zeus. And it's just because it's so wild of a pick. I mean, out of the blue, into this comp, I really want to know what Scream's going to be able to do with this. Because in comparison, you know, the Atlas has Guardian scaling, is super tanky, has a literal dash, a lot of range damage, to the point where yesterday, after talking about it to Hurry, when he was like, yeah, he kind of sounds like a mage when you describe him with just the positives. And then he's just a really tanky one at that. Zeus has good clear. We've seen that. Farm is a little slower than maybe what you'd like compared to what Dardes is getting. And if you can get it, I mean, you know, you think of big bursty combos with Naja ultimate usually, but falling down to a spot where Zeus has thrown his shield, hits you with a chain lightning, gets a couple bounces, 3 charges really quickly. A late game detonate, if he's leveling that first, not even that late in the game, maybe mid game is what we can describe it. And he's got 2 and 2, 1, 2 in the chain lightning, 2 in detonate. Then all of a sudden that becomes a lot of damage that you're going to be taking. Maybe not the same as if it was like a Vulcan ult getting dropped there. And then you factor in that he can drop his ult there. I don't know. I'm just so fascinated by what this pick can do, what it might do, admittedly what it might not do if it just gets run at the entire game. Like there's so many possibilities with it. And in the meantime, you still got Naja Kabrakan. Like you should have some really, really, really solid frontline and kind of gank capabilities from the Dragons throughout the game.
I think that's the important note, though, as you said, you know, if this Zeus is being run at, we haven't seen it yet.
Nope.
We haven't seen any pressure put on this Zeus. And that's where we always call it, you know, the dangerous territory at that point is, okay, if you're willing to let this Zeus free farm, maybe not so much. Pagon goes in, Lightning Storm dropped out of Fear No Evil. Will spell First Blood for the Oni Warriors, but Scream gonna fight back. detonate. Not enough damage needed. Just one more hit. A couple more shots from an archer maybe. But it's one kill to the Oni Warriors, nothing for the Dragons.
Unfortunate for Pagon there because there's not much you can do, right? They get the beads timer and Cuvo, perfect timing on this ultimate. Was wondering when he was going to show up, where he was going to show up, and if it was going to be Pagon. What, 15 seconds before those came off cooldown, finds the ultimate, locks down Pagon. Beautiful timing in that regard. And strips Screams, right? Scream didn't use his beads for the longest time because he was getting pushed under the tower, had high enough health bar, felt like it was going to be pretty solid. Pops him at the end, though, to try and get that kill at Dardes. So even though Cuvo only gets the one kill, which only gets the first blood for Dardes and is able to find that much pressure, you're halfway back already for your Fear No Evil. And while Pagon's going to be able to avoid it next time, Scream's not. So Scream's going to have to play incredibly cautious, or you're just going to be able to find an easy kill in mid. And if not you, then Neil, who's going to be able to rotate over there. He was dealing with Mike and causing a little bit of trouble. I think that that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for really just the two outside of the mid lane, the other two in the 3v3, that are just going to be able to pick up a lot of pressure and kind of bully the Zeus.
Invade by Neil, or at least a wall thrown up to try and slow down this purple buff. Freeze from Neil. Good. Shards of Ice and Fields of Love both used. They don't get anything. Purple buff goes over to the Jade Dragons. Mike will drop his own ultimate just to wall off a section to make sure the Oni Warriors don't push any further. But now Neil Ma might be trading a little too much of his health if he sticks around too long. Sash is good by Pagon. Takes him up in the sky.
Really?
There's not a whole lot of burst damage on follow-up immediately. Gonna need quite a bit there. Wall will keep the Zeus from firing off his damage. Fear No Evil puts Scream and PBM against the wall. And it's PBM the first one to fall down. Oni Warriors now with 2.
Yeah, unfortunate they don't get Scream, but that doesn't really matter when they get a kill anyway. They get a small invade on at least the Obelisk. Like you said, they defended the purple buff. So a small taste of what they're able to pick up. For the Dragons, not the end of the world that it's Mike that they end up losing, but if they lose anybody more than that, it becomes a much larger deal. Panda Cat's beads are going to be down. He's someone who becomes now a very easy target across the board, unless he goes for something big.
One more hit, not quite enough. And Neil Ma walks away. Shell was expended during the early process during that as well, so Neil Ma will be without that defense a little bit later on. But now it's the Oni Warriors who are the ones playing a lot more aggressive. Game number 1, the pacing was dictated by the Jade Dragons, who was Scream diving tier 1s over against the duo lane, diving the solo lane. But now the Jade Dragons are trying to get some fight back for themselves when Mike closes off the gap. But Dardes is able to walk around. Pagon takes him up, and that should be just enough damage, even on landing, to take him out. But Pagon has lost quite a bit of his. Beads have been expended by the Najah, but it's a 1 kill for the Jade Dragons to finally get themselves on the board.
Now look, I think Dardes is probably dead there no matter what. But that wall from the Ymir definitely didn't help him in that regard. Just left him right in a good spot where Pagon was able to line up the ult a little bit easier, a little bit better, and make sure that one was going to happen. I think that there are a lot of opportunities where Pagon is going to maybe find some success there. Unfortunate we caught that one on camera for Neil, and fortunate, finally, for the Dragons to be able to pick up a kill. But it does still go to show, again, Pagon's beads are down. Panda's beads are down. They've got a lot of CC available on the other side. I start to expect to see Cuvo do what he's been doing. A lot of focus on the left-hand side of the map, and he's still going to have that amount of control. Maybe, even an extra level of it because of this ultimate.
Panic Cat under pressure by Cuvo. Fred, who's rotated over. Jotun's Wrath is up now for the Hunt Bats, meaning that Fear No Evil 20% sooner. We'll be able to see that every single time for him. A couple of targets he could go for that don't have their beads. Could grab Panda Cat, unless Panda Cat's got the reaction speed to pop Tusky right before. Could still go for Pagon. Those are 100 seconds till those are away.
That is the key, right, when it comes down to it. Like, Pagon does not have a lot that he's going to be able to work with, and might be right here that he feels it.
Yeah, Fear No Evil, Shards of Ice, death, certainly, for Pagon. It's just a matter of who was going to get the credit for the kill. That one does go to Cuvo Fred. 1-0-2, his first kill of the game, but his 3rd impact play he's been able to make.
Yeah, I think that this has just been really solid for Cuvo because of where he has been able to go. Again, it's such a wild draft for the Dragons. Outside of, like you highlighted, Panda Cat, unless your beads are up, that's going to be a pretty much free pull for Cuvo whenever he throws his ult. And so for Pagon, Now for another minute, it's maybe going to be the beads back right before or maybe right after Cuvo gets his ult back. So not feeling too much stress about the next time that rolls around. Scream, beads are there. Panda Cat just got theirs back. So for the next like 5 minutes, whenever the next ult from Cuvo happens, it's not as stressful for the Dragons. Once somebody burns their beads for that, the next 5 minutes after that are very stressful. It should be like 3 minutes, right? Until your beads are back. It's going to be very stressful for you. And I just love the kind of priority that they've been having. I wish maybe they had been able to pick it off. You saw it around the purple buff. Cuvo just shy of hitting the monkey for the teleport to be able to try and chase down Panda Cat and find a very, what could have been easy solo kill. Instead gets a kill in the jungle. So it's not like it's that worse for him. Still on parity with where Pagon is, though. And so maybe they'd want a little more going in their favor to make sure they can feel like they have the true lead.
Well, one way for the Dragons to bring themselves back in the game is to grab some objectives, so they do just that. Pyromancer goes their way, adds some gold to their pockets, and at least tries to mitigate a little bit of the damage that the Warriors have done, but they're going to try and grab an objective of their own. Gold Fury started. Not a single member of the Jade Dragons knows that this is happening. The vision is to the Warriors, and so is the objective. Pyromancer traded for a Gold Fury, a win for the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, I think that is something that they can be more than happy with. Not only is it just, again, late game team fight, I think they've got really good CC, right? Really good engage, really good choice of engage as well, right? Whether it's going to be around an objective or if it's just, hey, we walled somebody in, we're gonna pick them off. The Dragons have a little bit of that, just because the Najah Sash can create a stun, Kukulkan exists. A lot of opportunities to maybe create a fight. And really good follow-up damage. Again, keep my eyes on the Zeus, because not only is it absolutely outrageous to me that it got locked in, but that Scream's playing at mid, all of that. And, of course, what it's going to do in this meta where it hasn't necessarily been the go-to mage for anybody, where he's going to fall. I think late game, it's kind of still tossed up in the air, but I'm favoring the Warriors. And if they can keep small leads like that going in their favor, right, objective trades that, while they're not going to be this big boost of gold, are still a little bit in their favor. And then a couple of invades that are a little bit in their favor. They're going to be able to pile that on. I mean, you had mentioned it already, a couple of thousand in their favor. If they can push that up to 4 or 5K by the time we're starting to talk Fire Giant faults or fights in the next 4 minutes or so at 18, it was that bar last year for when teams really started to pick it up. I think we could really start to see the Warriors run away with game 2.
Mike frozen. Finds the stun onto Neomod. The double stun. Vote under siege. Fields of Love and the Wind Fire Wheels both used to take them down. 2 ults for the one. But Vote does hold on to his beat, so he'll have them for the next time that rotation comes through. Don't think he was expecting Pagon to go for the ultimate there. Was probably just thinking, okay, Panda Cat's got his ult. I get through the stun. I live through here. But with that double ultimate, an easy kill for the Dragons.
Yeah, right. You get stunned by Tusky. Maintains the beads throughout all of that. Aegis was already burned, so that's going to be back up in about 20 seconds for Vote. All in all, you just trade 2 ults for 1, and yeah, you lose your life, but I think that's worthwhile maintaining the relics. If those get dropped, all of a sudden Mike, Pagon, Fine OK, they're starting to make like vacation homes over in the duo lane because they want to spend a lot of time over there when Vote doesn't have those, or it opens up some really big fight capabilities for the Dragons anywhere on the map, knowing that Vote has to play way more cautiously, way safer than would otherwise. So just really good, I think, on Vote to hold on to those, even though it ends up being a kill for the Dragons. But it's a worthwhile kill for them as well. There was starting to be a lead in the duo lane. Killing off Vote, letting Panda get a chunk of that, giving some over to Pagon as well for the experience and gold, makes it so that Pagon has a small lead over Cuvo, technically about half a level, and then you see Panda Cat at least on parity with Vote here in terms of making sure he doesn't fall too far behind.
Pagon is hugging the far left wall so that Vote won't see him
What if
on
I
this
did
rotation.
It again?
And he tried it again, but he didn't find the sash this time around. So Vote's able to dash back to the tower. Neil Ma now surrounded by 3 and a wall, but quick Phantom Shell will get him right on out. So no kill, no pick, or anything like that on the left side.
That was a very, very, very fast, but also great for the Dragons Phantom Shell because, again, Mike's walls are going to be up a little bit sooner than that is. It's the only shell they have on their side, which means as long as you can get the lockdown, you've got him up in the air.
Well, unfortunately,
I guess you could also just do that.
You could just walk up and do it again. You know, you just, okay, Phantom Shell's gone. What else do you got? You're still pretty squishy. So Pagon just walks up and grabs him, takes the kill, puts up 3 now for the Dragons.
Putting them all onto Pagon. I don't think that's necessarily the worst thing in the world, but interesting that they're all going there, right? The Naja, I think, showcasing that Pagon is active all around the map. But it is a lot of left-hand side focus, trying to make sure that PBM and specifically Panda are going to be ahead, kind of leaving Fine OK out. Not necessarily to dry, I just don't know that there's much you're going to be able to do over here, right? You're Naja, you come in, what are you going to try to do against the RDA? First off, the scaling, the tankiness already exists, so it's going to be very difficult to kill off Nika. But then on top of that, you sash in, Nika pops the cripple field and laughs at you while he walks away. Like, there's not a whole lot of opportunities, I think, for you to find over there. It's more so, I feel like, against Zeus, if he was massively ahead, which with 1 level, feels like he's doing pretty well, would be not even anything to scoff at, right? The damage would still be there. You'd get a lot out of your expectations for him. It's just interesting that they didn't put a lot of eggs in that basket to try and figure out if they could get him that far ahead.
Pyro was started, but with too many of the Warriors over, the Jade Dragons will pull away for now, and will lose that one. So the Pyromancer started by the Dragons, finished by the Warriors. Panda Cat drops ultimate. Tusky will hit vote. Trebuchet on Panda Cat's side for the continued pressure, which means that there will be maybe a forced rotation over. You know, I was kind of sitting here thinking about it, though, Gore, with this role swap between the two of them. Scream has played against all these junglers in the SPL. He kind of knows the rotation pass that these guys want to make and are going to make. Pagon, kind of in that same regard as a mid laner, knows how all the mid laners are going to want to play. We'll talk more on that after the fight, though. Ultimate onto Dardes, no Phantom Shell, or a little too late, I should say. And it's a double kill for Scream. Final K on the backside of the fight will not be able to grab anything there. And for now, the Jade Dragons, they find their 2 picks, and they make their way towards this mid-tier 1.
I'm floored, man. I don't even know how else to describe it. It is wild. It's been wild every time they've done it. It's still so crazy to me. But much like you were saying, right? You know, Scream's gonna know what to anticipate because he's been the one doing that.
Right.
He knows what Cuvo likes to do because he's had to be the one matching it. And like you said, Pagon's going to know what the other mid laners' tendencies are and, of course, what he hates. And he's going to be able to play to that because they have so much experience in that role. But then on top of all of that, you're showcasing what Mike is able to do. That was with a Phantom Shell on the other side, with beads from Dardes on the other side. They still get some massive kills. And the damage from Scream was huge.
Scream beads down, which means a free hit for Cuvo Fred and a free pop for Vote. But now Cuvo stuck in the middle, barely makes his way out, but Final K will be able to get to the back line and end that one. Half HP on the Cullen, wants to move in, but I don't think he's got the legs to do so. Panda Cat trying to fight back, but he doesn't have enough sustain in his kit to be able to get through there. Good wall by Neil Ma will lock out Final K, who finds a Quadra knockup, but unfortunately it's a double kill for Nika. Pagon wants to make the hero play, but all he's done is feed Nika the triple.
I mean, that's just textbook. You get the beads off of Scream, and then what is it? It's a Fear No Evil start from Cuvo. Easiest pickup of their lives, and then from that point forward, it was such a wild separation. I mean, Final K was alone, Panda Cat was alone, Pagon comes in after everybody else is dead, and so it was just pick off the Artemis. Artemis is going to do too much. Cool, we get the beads. That's just a benefit. That's a boost to what we already have. Feel great about that. Run over, Final K, again, was alone. Pagon comes in afterward to try and make a hero play, and unfortunately that just falls flat on its face. I mean, the Warriors took a fight that they were leading. They unfortunately lost a couple in mid, but ultimately they've been in control of this game, and they showcase what this draft can do against what the Dragons have picked up, kind of making sure to tear it apart at the seams and showcase where its weaknesses are. I mean, they play that one the exact way that these should play in a vacuum.
Jade Dragons trying to slow down the momentum of the Oni Warriors if they can, but the Oni Warriors have just been hot in every one of these team fights. Beads are gone from every single person, so nobody from the Dragons will be able to step up to this Primal Fury that the Oni Warriors have grabbed. And this is that momentum shift that the Oni Warriors needed in game number 1. Unfortunately, Scream was a little too hot on the Pele to begin with, and then it just kind of trickled out of control. Now, it seems to be the exact same case, but for the Oni Warriors. Cuvo Fred, sure, only 1 kill to his name, but all of the assists that he has and a majority of those kills that the rest of the team has have been off the back of him on this Hun Bats.
I really want to know what their thought process is behind these, because we haven't gotten straight answers.
No, we haven't, and they won't give it to us.
And I doubt we'll find out truly. Because again, what they said was just Scream's Atlas is insane. That's all. That's just all they said.
It's
Oh
just
yeah,
good.
the Scratlas. What are you gonna say about the Zeus? I mean, he's 2-1-1, right? I shouldn't harp on it too hard, but I do think that it is very much it's a one trick in this game. You know exactly what the style of fight is going to be. If your beads are up, then your team is going to be able to do a lot. If your beads are down and they hit Scream with any CC, he's going to die. And it is as pretty much binary as that. And so being able to look at that and essentially see it happening can feel a little rough.
Pagon wants this. But Cuvo Fred's ult will zone him away. Sash a little shy for Pagon to grab Cuvo Fred. Maybe Mike cannot. Blink was up for Cuvo Fred. Good thing he wasn't in the store trying to buy an item there, realized just how close the gap was closed. And he will be out just for now. But Blink is down, so a quick initiation or a quick escape from Cuvo gone. But he does trade out ult for ult with Pagon and beads from the Najah once again.
And again, one's coming up way faster than the other. Those beads
yeah.
are going to be down a lot longer than the Fear No Evil, but that doesn't mean the Fear No Evil has to land on Pagon. Pagon, depending on how they play these next couple of fights, might end up dropped on Scream, might end up dropped on Panda, both with their beads. Yes, it will burn them, but I think it gives Pagon a little bit of an opportunity. It also could just end up being an unfortunate position where they bully Pagon as much as possible. Again, freeze, all of the CC that they have available for the Warriors could just find its home, lock down the jungler for the Dragons, or the current mid laner turned jungler for the Dragons, and end up giving them even more of a comfortable lead.
Fire Giant around for the Oni Warriors. They were able to grab earlier on. About a minute left on the power play, so unlikely that we'll see a Phoenix Siege come from the Warriors. For now, just stripping away the last few towers that are on the map. Nearly 6,500 gold in the lead of the Oni Warriors. Not an insurmountable lead this stage of the game by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely one that has made it difficult for the Jade Dragons to be able to fight in. You see in that last little fight, Scream drops his ultimate, and all it takes for Neoma is a single wall to cut off an entire corridor from the Jade Dragons to be able to walk in and try and do anything more. And now with the siege by the Warriors, they will not stick around for the Phoenix. No, Dardas goes all the way back to base. So the Oni Warriors will now call off their offense.
And I actually really like where they're at anyway. They just got a lot of gold, so they should have, like, gold in hand should be pretty high for every single player. And you're looking at being able to pick up, 1,800, 1,500. So, like, tier 2s that they're going to be able to scoop back, or upgraded starters for some of those that haven't updated them, are going to be able to pick those up. That's a good power spike for them, plus, 7 seconds left on this FG. So they're just going to let that fall off, set up for the next fight with the lead that they already have. Hunter's Cowl, you got the Sentinel's Embrace, things like that are getting finished off. If Dardas ideally farms up and hits level 20 before then, more than likely you can imagine that's going to be an upgraded starter as well. Start talking ward coverage, etc., and all being in favor of the Dragons. But I also like the way that the Dardas and Vote have built this game, because your biggest threats, I think, are going to be Find OK and Mike just running down at you, right? I think Pagon can get back there. I think that, Scream, Panda, you're going to want to do a lot of damage to them. But the builds they have gone through and for are going to burn through these frontliners pretty quickly and make it even more awkward for some of these more and just, less mobile Mage and Hunter to try and run away for the Dragon. So I really like where they're going. Plus all that, there's 2 towers standing over on right. Those are going to die incredibly quick with 2 Hunters. The Phoenixes, if they get this next FG, die incredibly fast with 2 Hunters. Plus all of the CC they have for engage. It's just a really clean draft, I think, from the Warriors. And so far, they've played it in a way that has mounted them a lead because of that.
Now they set up for the next Fire Giant. As soon as it lands in, it's already started. Frenzy popped as well. Not a chance the Dragons can even get close to trying to get to this Fire Giant pit. A great wall from Neil Ma will make sure that there is no chance of entry to the Oni Warriors. With Fire Giant, we'll all go back to base. I thought maybe we would see a push towards tier 2 and right, but instead, they've gone for a full reset. You can see a couple of at least tier 1, tier 2 items being bought, but felt that maybe, Gore, they could have just gone for a little more.
Yeah, the only person who got anything big out of that back was the Spirit Robe for Neil. Very helpful, very nice. Don't know if everybody needs to go back for that, but it also prevents you from being staggered, right? If you get caught in a 4v5 because Neil backed, then all of a sudden things are a little more awkward. Spend the gold you have, get the Fury, Set yourselves up. I'm more surprised to see them focused over here on left than on right, right? I mean, admittedly, it's only one tier 2, so you could probably ignore it for now. Try to go for this Phoenix. That's going to be an important landmark. Plus, you've got a very massive wave making its way down. So there's a lot of merit to this side of the map. But normally we'd see the split. No one's really pushing up mid just yet. So I really am curious as to where the Warriors' game plan. Wouldn't be surprised if Cuvo maybe runs down mid, tries to clear a couple of waves. The other 4 stack up on left, try to get that under the Phoenix. But all you need from Cuvo, and maybe not even the wave, but like just run through the jungle, kind of get towards that rock next to the green buff that gives you the ability to blink just over the wall and look for a good Fear No Evil. And then all of a sudden, you've got the setup that your team needs. You're in a really good position to try and separate specifically Scream or Panda from the rest of the team. Or you're going to burn a lot of beads. And if you burn the beads, your team's able to knock down the Phoenix while you're distracting them. Maybe it costs you your life, but even at the end of the day, you get something that is massively beneficial. And then you'll run the same play, do it in mid. Run the same play, do it in right.
All 10 players grouped up towards the left side. Cuvo Fred hovering inside the jungle. At least at the moment, up by that lower rock. Yoni Warriors waiting for the minions to show up. Don't have backdoor protection strip because it's not an enhanced fire giant buff, just a standard one. Not a whole lot clear from the Jade Dragons, depending on the Odysseus bow procs from Panda Cat in order to grab those minion waves through. Oni Warriors are playing this one very patiently because they've got plenty of time to spare. Oni minions in right, plus a Trebuchet to push in.
This is also where things get a little awkward. Every mage, naturally uses their abilities for clear, but some are going to do it a little bit better, right? Zeus is not necessarily the best throw out one ability, clear the whole wave that you're going to see. And so that's something that the Warriors can really pile on.
Big ult by Scream to start. Gets a lot of damage towards Neil Ma, but not enough damage to find a kill. Pagon goes in with the ultimate, gets the beads away from Nika. Now this Artio with a little less safety.
I think that's going to be maybe an opening that they could have. Again, a good stun from the Dragons. A lot of burn that exists there. But it's not a lot in the grand scheme of things. I'm going to keep my eye mostly on the fact that Dragons use 3 ults. Still everything up for the Warriors. This should be a big opener.
Frenzy pop. Nika stun. The Fields of Love are down. Doesn't catch anybody, but Mike has been frozen. He is melting away quickly. The wall will cut off his path. Scream is able to find 1, but it is 2 down, and so is Scream. 3 of the Jade Dragons removed from the map. Nika finds a double stun. Pagon on his last legs, and he is gone. It is only Fine OK left alive against 4 of the Oni Warriors, and with no other towers left, the Warriors can march right in and find a Game 2 victory, barring a miracle defense from Fine OK, but there's too much damage. This time, the Jade Dragon style does not work. Oni Warriors find Game 2.
So I'm a long-winded dude. I like to talk. Chat, like sometimes it's to the benefit, sometimes it's not, right? It's to my detriment. I go on usually for a long time. And what I'm doing here is not only showcasing that, but also buying myself some time because that game was draft diff, and there's not really many other ways to break it down. There's so much that it's just, they had a heavy CC comp with really good engage, and you had a Zeus, and that alone is really just kind of like, it just, you forget about the role swap because, we've seen them win with that. So that's not even Scream's playing mid. Of course they're going to. I genuinely just don't understand why that mage of all things, maybe you're trying something. I think this is a really good time to test stuff. Phase 3, you've already been doing well with a 2-0 start. You have a 1-0 lead. But it does feel like one of those moments where it's like, okay, now you know it doesn't work. Want to be seeing Zeus for a little while. There's just too much that's good against Zeus in the meta right now.
Right.
And when you have things like the Manticore Spike, like enticing people to pick CC heavy gods, the one guy who can't run away and has to use his beads on cooldown does not seem like the guy to go to.
This time it doesn't work out for the Jade Dragons. The Oni Warriors have finally put that first game to get the momentum going up. Can they continue that into game number 3? We'll find out after this break.
And it looks like the Oni Warriors will be able to take us to a game number 3. It was a hard-fought battle, but it looked like the casters sort of mocked it up to a drop diff, right? I mean, it was just a bit of the composition wasn't able to survive long enough, right? When you pick a Zeus, you got to keep it alive. If you can't keep that Zeus alive, the Oni Warriors are just going to be looking real clean. And also, I just want to say that Neilma, we sort of talked to him around the ping pong table during the break, and he said, let it be known, the Oni Warriors will not get role swapped on. So I feel like pretty confident after that game.
I mean, I think we're all probably a little happy to see the Dragons humbled a little bit. Even fans are like, okay, guys, like, you've had your fun. Let's bring it back. Let's close the set out. Like, this is as far as it goes. Probably not, but hopefully, from my perspective, it doesn't get any crazier than Scream playing mid and playing Zeus. I am a Zeus fan, so I was kind of, hoping for a little bit of a Zeus win. I'm a little biased on that, but for how the Warriors played and for how the drafts went out and the roll swap on top of everything, I'm not surprised that they ended up falling there. The Warriors looked great as well. I would say this RDO solo looked really potent as well.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
a little worried that she's going to be coming back, Trelly. She looked really strong. All the other solo laners who are sick of playing this character before are shaking in their boots because they might have to pick this up too, honestly.
Yeah, I'm a little worried myself because, we've been seeing it so strong in the support role. People just like going Manticore spikes and spamming, but Nika with the Conduit gem started popping off real hard once that gem of focus got online, was still able to do so much damage. I think you might be right. RDO solo could be a newfound force that, has always been strong, but also back into the meta. The Oni Warriors, though. We said it from the get-go, from their draft. It seemed like 5v5 team comp, that's what they're going for, and their team fight is really where this comp excelled. The question is, we don't get to see the Jade Dragons come back from like a loss too often because they don't lose too often. Is this a situation where you scrap the whole comp and go back to Scream in the jungle, Pagon in the mid? My opinion, probably yes. Do you think they're probably sharing that same sentiment, or you think they double down and they show their confidence here?
Yeah, I've seen every side of that. I've seen them flip-flop. I've seen them stick to their guns. I like the Dragons that stick to their guns, though. I'm hoping that they can either they can stick to this strategy or they can just swap it up a little bit. I would have liked to maybe see the Atlas in that position. It seemed like a good game for it, too, in my opinion. I don't think they need to worry too much if they felt confident on it and they've been scrimming with it. Maybe not the Zeus, but the same kind of idea I think is good. They have been seeing success with it. I would continue to expect them to be able to do so. So just clean it up. Maybe, don't go so far off the beaten path and see what they can get away with.
So even as a Zeus liker, you're a big supporter of the Zeus. Even you have to say, like, all right, let's dial it back. Like, if
it wasn't a great. It felt like Scream knew he was playing Zeus when he walked in today, no matter what he was against.
It wasn't a Zeus.
He was dreaming about it. He was ready.
Yeah.
He was running through the motions in his head, but he had his fun. Game's over. Let's come back to reality, and let's see. Let's actually look at the drafts before we decide our picks. That's what I'd have to say.
I would say that's the face of a man who is done playing Zeus for the day.
Yes, sir. He's locked in.
All right, so the Jade Dragons will continue, and the Oni Warriors will also continue with the same style of bans we've seen thus far. The AMC and the Daji, that's nothing new. Yamoja into the Hades, also nothing new. Last time the Oni Warriors did take away that Pele, though. I'm curious to see if that is going to follow suit. Of course, the Morgan is going to be the option, taking Dardas off that, but this is where the real change will be made. Is it going to be the Pele? And it is. So, will the Jade Dragons go with that same sort of style, looking for the Naja, or are they going to switch up the draft completely? It looks like grabbing the Ymir, so in my head, it looks like let's dial it back. The roll swap could certainly still happen, but at the very least, grab this Ymir, take it away from Neilma, and let's come out swinging with some early pressure in that duo lane.
Yeah, this is a big moment as well. People saying I want Ymir over Cabrakan now. Maybe that cements Ymir for the Dragons. For the rest of the split is my guess, knowing Mike, as maybe the better choice here. They really did not have duo pressure last game. We talked about it a bit before the game, but we kind of saw the Warriors running the duo lane, and I know that is not how Panicat, that is not how Polar Bear Mike like to operate. They want to be the ones in control. They want to be the ones in charge, so not surprising at all to see that Ymir taken away instead of the Cabrakan. Maybe they can do a little bit more of this kind of interesting stuff we've been seeing at the purple buffs as well at the start of the game.
Yeah, that could be the strategy. Whenever you're looking for a purple buff invade, or at least trying to defend your own purple buff, it's always some mind games of, okay, as long as I'm standing here and I have Hog, there's no reason for you to be here. But if you're wasting that Hog, you can then open up that pressure, as we talked about a bit between the breaks. So let's dive in here to see what the Jade Dragons are trying to get for Panda Cat. Probably save that pick for later more often than not, but you already know know you're up against a Cupid, right? You see that immediately. The Artemis is certainly a decent spot, but you were talking about some pressure. Hou-Yi doesn't have the best matchup 1v1 style in the Cupid, but you can set up some great plays, some double bounces with the wall as well. We know that Panda Cat likes to go to that, so certainly could be the option. But when a Wheelix gets locked in, more often than not, and I can only think of one time, it went over to Pagon. So this may be the Jade Dragons that are sticking to their guns, as you said. But then that also goes to Pagon, so now I'm confused.
Yeah, maybe Scream's picked up the Wheelix. I really don't think Scream's going back to mid and playing this Vulcan.
Yeah, I think
that would
so,
be
too.
surprising. I mean, it's all been surprising. That would be particularly surprising, at least to me.
Right.
So I think maybe Scream's picked up the Wheelix. I mean, it could even go solo or something like that as well, but I'm going to have to imagine that that's got to be Scream playing that. I don't know what Scream's a Wheelix game to them. Maybe they just, that's their go-to next jungle pressure character.
Right.
With Pele gone, maybe they've lost some confidence in the Naja now, so they're going to go to the Wheelix maybe as their next jungle pressure choice. That makes sense for me. It makes sense for what the Dragons like to do, so let's see where they go from here.
Yeah, I actually like the way that your mind's running this way, because it seems like the early pressure was what was working for them, right? If you let the Oni Warriors get online, if you let them get to late game with their team fight style draft, it wasn't looking good. What brings early pressure? You know, when Pele's off the map, a Wheelix is really strong in those early levels. So I think that could be the mindset. You already got some great setup there with the Vulcan. The meatball is going to provide a ton, and that does sort of force in the Cabrakan to play safe, right? If this does go over to Neil, as it has been, either you're taking beads so you don't get knocked up and pulled back into the team, or you really have to watch your positioning. As we get into the second wave of bans, Nika is not going to be able to reprise the role on that RDO, thank goodness, because that was a disgusting gameplay, as well as Final K's King Arthur also going to be taken away. A lot of solo-oriented bans for both of these teams. Final K is going to take one more on the Cthulhu as it drowns out with the Guan Yu. So both solo laners are going to have to dive deep into the God pools when trying to grab a pick here.
Yeah, they're both solo laners with deep God pools, so I'm not particularly worried for either of them. You know, if I'm the Warriors, I'm kind of kicking myself because I honestly think running back the RDO in this top 3 probably would have been more worth for them than perhaps maybe the Naja third pick, but they know themselves better than me. I am sure that Nika's got something in the back pocket here. We'll see what that happens to be. I think it's smart solo lane bans from both teams kind of taking away their newfound comfort picks. So they will be having to dig deep here. And honestly, your guess is as good as mine as to what they're going to be looking to pick up.
I want to talk more about, you know, how Panda Cat likes to play, because in Game 3 situations, that's when we see Panda Cat come up big, right? It's usually when he'll find those crazy solo kills, he'll get crazy aggressive in lane, try and make these plays for his team. So do you think, even in a matchup like the Cupid, for example, where I don't think Hou-Yi really excels, do you think that Panda Cat might try to go back to that to make those solo plays, or just play it safe, go with something like the Artemis that has a decent matchup into the Cupid?
You know, Trelly, I'm glad you brought it up. I know Panda Cat pretty well. I think Artemis was probably his preferred matchup, but that last game was pretty abysmal on his side of the map, so I do think he'll try to swap it up. I don't know if he'll have enough confidence to go for a matchup like Hou-Yi and a Cupid. To me, that just seems like a matchup that's just a little too unfavored for Hou-Yi. I think he might have something else up his sleeve that isn't Artemis, that isn't Hou-Yi, that is a good matchup for Cupid. I don't necessarily know what it's going to be. I know Panda Cat, maybe he goes to the good old classic Danzaburo or something like that, but I don't really know. Your guess, once again, is as good as mine. They've been pulling out a lot of new stuff lately. I haven't seen a lot of this stuff even in my practice, so I'm going to guess that it's going to be a good matchup into the Cupid. I don't think he'll run back the Artemis, but you never know. He is hard-headed.
Yeah, that's very true. I just think that he wants to get aggressive, and he's tired of sitting back. You know, he had to play very reserved in that matchup, and that's just not the way that he likes to run the duo lane. You already highlighted the Jade Dragons in particular love getting that duo pressure, and with Ymir, you sort of already cemented that, right? You're going to be playing just fine as long as Neomon and Vote just don't get off to this overwhelming early start off of, you know, just hogging the Interceptor, getting that pressure, and putting down the duo. It's going to be looking real solid, but the set, that's going to be, okay, so first of all, obviously Panda Cat is looking to go aggressive as heck as you can, because on her loves those 1v1s, loves to jump in, use that Desert Fury to try and pick up solo kills, as well as Final K on the set. Not something I would have expected in a Game 3 situation, but when the Jade Dragons are about to lose their win streak, this is what they go to.
It makes a lot of sense to me, honestly, Trelly. I mean, like we mentioned, he probably lost a little bit of faith in that Artemis. Like you said, he wants to be the one in control. He wants to be one taking the lead. On her is that character. He always has been. He comes in and out. But he should have a pretty solid matchup into the Cupid. I would say between the Kabrakan and the Cupid and the Ymir and the Onher, I would think the Dragons kind of edge that one out a little bit there, especially with that Onher pick being last. So it makes sense to me why they would go for that. Set is interesting. This is, I guess, the back pocket pick that we were looking for from Alec. And the Fafnir, we didn't anticipate this, but it makes sense now to me that they would have the Kabrakan go solo and then switch the Fafnir to support, especially with so many solos being banned, and Kabrakan obviously being a pretty solid solo laner himself. So makes sense that it worked out this way. I think both teams had a pretty clever end of their draft here, and I think they both probably got what they wanted.
Yeah, it's a fair point. You know, we highlighted at the beginning of this set entirely that Kabrakan can play 3 to 4 roles extremely solid at the moment. So always could have flexed over to solo lane, hasn't seen it in a while just because of the, you know, the rise of these different style of healers as well as pressure. But Kabrakan in solo always was that option. So after all of the solo bans that went through, the pivot was just, hey, we'll just grab Fafnir. We have double Hunter. This used to be meta, like back when, what, Phase 2, Masters, that sort of thing. Double Hunter Fafnir was pretty strong, and it looks like that's going to continue to be the case here for the Oni Warriors, trying to get this Cernos online, trying to get the Cupid online, and then just use Coerce to shred through objectives. They are missing a little bit of objective burst, which I think the Jade Dragons clearly have the edge on with the Vulcan, with Earthshaker just being able to, you know, really burst those objectives harder than anyone on the Oni Warriors could really do. But when you're looking at the setup, is this the same side of team-style composition, or they do have the Naja? That tells me, like, single pick base. Are the Oni Warriors still playing for that late game?
I think a little bit less than they were in game 1,
Right.
so they've come, you know, some way in their thinking throughout this day today with their drafts. I think there's a little bit of a middle ground for both teams, if you will. Some more pressure for the Warriors, some more team fight for the Dragons. I think they've met somewhere in the middle, so let's see who kind of masters that middle ground playstyle that they both come to see in this game 3.
Right, and I think that's whoever wins like best of 3 sets is always who makes the most adaptations, because game number 1 and then whoever wins game number 2, if it goes to 3, had to make the adaptation. So now we're in this game 3 situation where you're leaving it all on the line, and the Jade Dragons have drafted in a Wheelix composition with early pressure from the duo lane, but also they've got Set carry in the back, not actual carry in solo lane, but Set, whenever he's on the map, has that hard carry potential for Fine OK, and I do expect to see them playing through that, right? Because as a Set player, you don't want to be the first one in the fight. Mike has to be the facilitator for this team, get some relics down, get some escapes down, that sort of thing, and that can really let Final K go to the back line. So you think this is a game that a Set can really dive to the back and get all that damage off, or is there too much CC for the Warriors to try and stop that?
It's going to come down to engage, I think, and engage is kind of a complicated concept, but basically whoever gets the fight started on their terms, I think is going to be looking to have good team fights. Alec is going to need someone probably to open up team fights for him a little bit because he's playing an assassin. Obviously, he'll probably build some tank items, but if Mike can find a nice wall, start the fight, catch a carry out of position, kind of open up and get some dash forces, I think we'll see a really nice game out of Final K.
All right, should be the case. Now let's throw it real quick over to J Mac and Gore to finish this set off.
So much. A game 3 scenario for the Jade Dragons. Their first game 3 of the phase so far, and up against the Oni Warriors. The weird composition style they've been running in their game 2s up until this point, well, it finally faltered. They weren't able to get that win over the Warriors, so now they see themselves in this weird position, Gormizer, where we have Final K playing Set solo. That's not necessarily all that weird itself, but it does feel like the Jade Dragons have at least 2 lanes where Scream can just kind of camp as long as he wants to, just because knock from Panda Cat, knock up from Pagon feels like it's so powerful for this Wheelish.
The knock-up from Panda Cat, though, is a little more, let's call it risky, I think is the best way to describe it. Like, if you're going in for the knock-up on that one, your team better win that fight. I think it is going to be, like you said, though, pretty easy for Scream. I think we've seen a lot of this Wheelish already so far this phase that has been successful, and even on teams where normally there isn't a lot of knockups, right? If you can just ignore them for the most part, you're still seeing more often than not on the Wheelish that comes through. But now you've got the meatball, you've got a little bit more, you might have first blood.
This is bad for Mike. Finally gets his movement speed back from the Invader's Curse. Does he have the help from his carry? One more auto is all that's needed, but Neil can't close the gap. Body blocks from Panda Cat, and PBM will make it out. Another risky invade nearly cost Mike his life.
And you would think maybe they'd be able to close the gap. It is still going to make this very difficult for the Dragons to come back. I mean, look, you've got potions, low enough health bars right now that you're going to be able to make your way back into it, but you still have to be very cautious of your Dragons up here.
Feather step good from Scream. Nika trying to run as fast as he can, but he can't run quick enough. Fine, okay, on the board first. The
Nice
knockup
knockup.
from Scream is good. The feather step after one more auto, and it's 2 kills for the Jade Dragons.
Yeah, both going 1-0 and 1 for the right-hand side of the map. That is a great way to get your assassins started. And Mike's back to full health, so not only do you manage to barely, narrowly avoid the first blood on the left-hand side, you get it and then some over on the right. That's going to really enable him. You do have to burn beads if you're fine, okay. That's going to feel a little unfortunate. But I think that in the grand scheme of the lead, that's going to get you, especially if Scream stays over here and they go for a second time, then I think it's going to really enable these squads to get hyper-aggressive, potentially find another kill, and really get fine, okay, the way that Trelly had set it on the desk, off to such a great start where they can just play straight through the set.
Scream rotates in.
Blinks up.
From back behind, teleport in. Beads a little late from Nika, but a double stun will lock both of the assassins down. So Scream not going to be able to pick up a kill this time, but grabbing the relic from Nika means this Kabrakan very susceptible to another rotation towards this lane. That was a long time that was invested by Scream. Will go for a speed buff invade, because where is the jungler for the Oni Warriors? Cubo Fred is down at the blue buff. This will be a speed for blue trade.
Yeah, the blues getting traded out ultimately, so it makes more sense there. I want to see if Cuvo, I was hoping actually maybe to see him get even more aggressive, right? He's going for the back camp clear right now. That's enough, right? That's going to get you some experience back and in your favor. But losing the speed buff, having that mobility stripped from you, it's just, let's just call it a tilter, right? Like, it's just one that's going to get to you mentally. I wouldn't have minded to see him go down there and look for it.
Oh no, purple buff does get stolen a tad early on the Hog from PBM, lived with 2 HP. And then Neilma and Vote were able to grab it with just a single auto immediately afterwards. So not only did Mike not successfully invade the last purple buff, he almost died, didn't even get to secure the second spawn of their purple. So a little bit of XP behind now for Mike and Panda Cat. Won't put them too far behind, but it's definitely something at least to point out.
Well, Panda is in an interesting spot because Panda, because he got the solo experience, is slightly ahead. I guess it depends. You know, now we could look at XP needed, is slightly behind by like 11 experience, I think I saw there, from where Vote is. So it did put Vote in the lead, but they're mostly in parity. It's really just Mike, right? I mean, he missed out on the initial experience. He got kind of zoned out hard at the very first wave. Now loses this purple. You're starting to see it really impact the Ymir. Luckily, you're still Ymir, like level 5 for Ymir. Shards of Ice is nice, not necessary. I think a lot of his kit is in the first 3 abilities, and so it does make it worse off for you because the level scaling, things like that are always going to hurt. But I don't think hitting that level 5 mark first matters as much.
Level 3 for Mike, though. Impale good, and a freeze right after. Means that he'll be fine, but that's Fields of Love expended from Vote. And it did get the shell, so a little bit of fear from Mike there, just in case the damage was a little too much. So he'll lose out on that relic. Fine, okay, playing aggressive up towards the blue buff to see if he can maybe steal this one away. Pick a fight, does pop his bees, ring toss. Good. An ultimate from Cuvo Fred. Had a fear of fine, okay, maybe the fact that Scream was rotating over. No ultimate for the Naja. Bead's still available. And Scream will be happy to try and steal this speed buff away. Walks away from that one. Won't go in any further. But Neilma's right behind Scream. Jumps, stunned immediately afterwards. Stunned by the sash. Now Scream is probably the one going to go down because he feather steps into the tower. And Cuvo Fred, Dardes getting the credit for the kill.
And you know what? I got to give Scream some credit because he recognizes, you know what? After that stun, that hammer hits from Neil, you're not getting out of there. There's no way with Suku down, you're just not going to be able to find the survivability, the escape path that's necessary. So he goes for the kill. Unfortunate that kill puts him in the tower range and immediately makes it much easier for the Warriors. And then double walls over here keep PBM engaged.
Ultimate from Pagon does hit 2, but that's not going to save PBM from the rest of the damage of the Oni Warriors, who have now tied up the score. It was 2 kills in the solo lane, 1 apiece for Scream and Final K, but those 2 kills have been answered back right away by the Oni Warriors. 1 onto Nika, and now 1 onto Dardes as well.
This is going to be a moment, I think, for the Warriors where, again, comfortable turnarounds, little moments like that from the Dragons, don't necessarily mean it's the end of the game for them, but it does showcase, I think, where things can go wrong, right? Stun, CC, good onto the Awelish, not a lot of survivability once the Suku is down. And good walls, good control from the Warriors that can lock people up pretty easily. Nika on the solo side, having the Kabrakan, having the Fafnir. I just think that they have a decent enough engagement. I mean, Hurry said it on the desk where, like, you know, game one, if you look at this, hyper late game aggression from the Warriors and late game comp, and very early game comp from the Dragons. Here you get a little bit of both from each side, but scaling maybe a little further late game for the Warriors, a little more early for the Dragons. It's definitely going to make things interesting, both with their merits. Good engage, mainly coming from Mike, but if you can catch him out and keep him isolated, again, he was a little further behind, still a little technically behind from where Neil is. If you can keep him down, then I think that opens up the Warriors to a much more successful game.
Yeah, I think Hurry may have hit the nail on the head with his now Sanodes. Who's going to play the better middle ground? Who's going to have that better mid-game kind of between those teams to figure out which one is going to be able to bridge the gap between that early and late stage. Panda Cat on her. It's a slightly different look as far as this season is concerned. We don't see a whole lot of on her, but it's definitely no stranger for a pick to Panda Cat between on her, Ho Yi, those jump in your face, all-in style kits. Really want to box you is the type of play that Panda Cat loves to typically go towards.
Really, really watching walls and Panda Cat, right? Look, Ymir on her, for those of you who have been playing Smite for a long time, it's the kill lane, right? Hey, I'll throw a wall, you hit Impale, they're dead. Like, we're going to get them after that. I'll freeze. The stun is going to last so long, they have nothing they can do. Worst case scenario, we get their beats and then kill them the next time because those are such low cooldowns.
Freeze, but an ult from Cuvo finds Scream. On landing, Scream will be okay. Maybe. No, he won't. Big burst damage. Ult from Pagon finds only Neilma. Will go through the shell. A little bit of extra damage after. But a great collapse by the Warriors to find a pick on the jungler.
It looked so good from Pagon. 3 people are in it, and then just as it's going to hit, the 2 of them get out of there. And it's just the tank. Neil just goes, oh, guys, I think something might have hit me. He just keeps walking. Does not worry about it.
I don't even think he realized it hit him.
Well, he had to notice a little bit.
It broke the shell. It broke the shell.
Either way, it's just unfortunate, right? I think what was a really good-looking gank for the Dragons just falls a little flat. And there's not really much you can say about it. It's not like Pagon could have planned the ult better. It was well-targeted, well-aimed. There's not many ways to lock people down in there outside of the freeze. And Mike had been using a lot to disengage, and even now, like, has to use a lot, and has been using a lot for his own disengage and trying to stay alive. I think that what we're going to be seeing is, as the game goes on, Pagon and Panda Cat are going to do a lot of good damage, a lot of impactful damage, and they're going to do it from the backline and ideally from safety. But you're going to have to rely on FineOK and Scream, and really on Mike for engage and starting the fights themselves. I don't know how much of it's going to rely on Pagon and Panda. I think Mike kind of has to dictate it for the Dragons, as the desk had alluded to. And then the other 2 assassins need to be the ones that kind of lead the way, herald the Dragons into a victory, while the others are just able to get their damage out there from the backline.
Pagon going to team up with Scream for the mid 2v2. A level down for both of them, 2 levels down. For PBM on the Ymir, has not been able to get nearly the same level of farm he would hope for. And a 4-man invade towards a red buff. Pagon and Scream are just trying to clear out their own jungle. But the pressure that the Oni Warriors have put out there, the level of which they are able to just walk through enemy territory so confidently. And now over towards the Pyromancer. Could be a pull, won't be. Scorpion up, a little bit easier of a target for them to grab.
Yeah, not a lot of neutral objectives so far this game, right?
No.
It's been, I mean, granted, it's only 10 minutes. But it feels like the fights that, and really this set, have not been around Pyromancers and Furies as often, right? They've definitely happened, but it hasn't been as big of a focus for either of these squads. I do think this Pyromancer, though, really, really jumps up in terms of priority. I think for both squads, if you can get a good kill on it, I mean, for either of them, you're talking about like a substantial lead if you're the Dragons and you're able to pick it up. Or a virtually even slight lead in favor of the Warriors if they get it.
FineOK, stuck in the wall with Nika. Sash is good onto 1. Knock up good onto Nika to pull him right back to the ground for Pagon's ultimate to take it through. FineOK grabs Cubo, Fred, Neil Ma can't even get the jump away. He jumps too short, and Pagon finds the double kill. This is the turnaround fight that the Jade Dragons needed.
Honestly, that was just so well played. I loved watching that. Watching it from specifically the damage that Pagon was able to do. Unfortunately, he's going to lose his life, so it isn't just a clean engage and get out from the Dragons. But still, being able to see Scream, knock up, pull back, keep people in the ult for Pagon, freeze from Mike over the wall, despite him not being walled off, making sure that he can keep some of those carries alive, and specifically keep Fine OK in the engagement for the fight. Skewer comes out. They again, a lot of good damage for him. And then just from downtown, right? Pagon able to help pick up a ton. He gets the double kill for that one, and is a majority of the health bars that disappear for the Warriors. I think that was just a really beautiful turnaround, like you said, from the Dragons. Still end up losing Pagon after the fact, and you know, maybe there's like a sad face because of that, but I don't think they need to be worried about it. I think that was a really good engage, or even better, counter engage. And I think if they can get things like that for them, they're going to be feeling fine with it. A lot of it, though, again, relied on Mike, relied on Scream CC to keep people in place. And so if they can continue that amount of route, make sure that Pagon, and then eventually when he joins the fight, Panic At are set up, they'll be fine.
Fine OK, no beads. Still has Shell, uses it, but doesn't have his teleport to get out of there. That's finally a pick over towards Fine OK to put him down. Scream has 3 people surrounding him, finds Tanaka, pulls Nika right back in, but Nika's not the one taking the tower, it's Cuvo Fred. And because of that, it is more than enough time for Dardes and Nika to take down the solo laner. What started off as 2 kills for the Jade Dragons by the 2 assassins, they're now the most recent kills for the Oni Warriors.
Yeah, what was a 1-0-1 start for Scream, now 1-3, I want to say and 4, yeah, with the assist. So he's been able to pick up a little bit and has been a big part of this. I like the Gold Fury call, but I don't know if they have the damage to control this.
Pagon's got ult and has damage. Vote will not go any further, already used his dash and his ultimate to play aggressive in. Pagon playing with very little mana as well on this Vulcan. So, Gold Fury does go to the Jade Dragons. They're backing on opposite sides of the entry. I'm not sure if Neil Ma or Vote were willing to walk that far into enemy territory.
Yeah, I was watching them, right? If they see the edges of those backs, either of them, they're jumping in, right? Yeah. Immediately, Neil's jumping in, stunning somebody. And if they get Pagon, even more beneficial because he had no mana like you had highlighted. So it could have been a really big play, I think, for the Warriors to maybe try and bounce back. I think great play from Vote to come over and drop the Fields of Love. I completely forgot Vulcan the ult was in the game for a second. So I was like, I don't know if they have the damage for it. Yeah, it turns out they had the secure. Although it wasn't the ult itself that got the secure. It was the backfire afterward. So still having to play a little cautiously around that. I think that the Dragons are reading the map well, or at least reacting to the map well. But the problem is when you get caught in a cycle of reacting in Smite, especially in the SBL, usually that doesn't go well for you, right? Unless your counter engage is just so incredibly strong, it tends to be something where maybe you have a couple of fights where you do get the true counter engage. It feels really good. You win a fight. Looks great. But most of the time, you want to be the one, and Hurry had kind of highlighted this on the desk, you kind of want to be the one choosing the fight. You want to make sure that it happens on your terms, that you're getting what you want out of it, and Mike is the one who's going to be doing that. And unfortunately, kind of been controlled for a lot of this game, still technically a little bit behind in experience. And with the way that things had just happened on right with the kills that went the way of the Warriors, I think that reading the map for the Gold Fury was great. But there's definitely a universe where that fight does not go the way they want it to, and the Dragons lose even more. So I think that they have to figure out where they want to start putting their pressure and get their hands on the wheel a lot sooner if they want to make sure that this stays in their favor.
Now here's this middle ground, this kind of mid-game
Yeah.
that is being pushed up right now as we approach 15 minutes in. The Jade Dragons will try and go for a Scorpion Steal. Wall will keep Cuvo Fred out. Just long enough for the Dragons to grab that neutral objective away from them. Very slight gold lead, as you mentioned. Only about 1,000 up for the Jade Dragons this early in. Means basically nothing experience. Slightly for the Oni Warriors, about 1,300 their way. So you might as well just be able to call this a dead even game at this point. And looking at Dardes and Vote's builds, actually mirroring each other, funny enough, besides the fact that one of them has gone for Death's Toll, one of them has gone for Leather Cow.
The one downside, I think, of specifically the experience split right now, is mainly where all of it is. Cuvo's up 2 levels. No, we'll call it 1.5 because Scream just ticked over to 13. He's fallen behind in terms of where the Awelish is. So Cuvo really helping run this. the desk had mentioned it, but a lot of single target damage when it comes down to like the Naja, you've got the Kabrakan, right? A lot of individual focus to the point where like Khepri would have maybe even loved going into a comp like this, but then you lose out on even more if you're the Dragons, right? It's just the idea that, okay, they're going to choose one, that person's probably going to die or at least take a ton of damage and forced out of the fight. Then you have to find the turnaround for it. And they just haven't been able to find the turnaround just yet, I think, for the Dragons. And so the Warriors have been able to dictate a lot of this, and when your jungler has a lead, Cuvo's going to be able to play like that for free.
Vote frozen. Does get away from the Awelish. Beats from FineOK. Ring bounce goes between the other 4 members of the Jade Dragons. I think FineOK maybe bit off a little more than he could chew. Full power on the set, not going for any kind of a tanky build. Just realize that he has gone full damage this time around.
They are not looking to FineOK as the frontline.
No.
He's not. Well,
No.
he's a frontliner, but not in the regards of he's going to go up and tank. He is running at them the way that an assassin is going to. Meanwhile, the Kabrakan is going to be a little bit of half and half, right? He's got some damage, and a lot of his items are damaging more than anything. But he's got Guardian scaling. That kind of works in his favor there. It's definitely going to be kind of matched, though. Because the walls, the control, I won't be surprised, actually, looking at Nika's build, he might just get blown up in the middle of a fight.
Scream, no beats. Feather step over the ultimate from Dardes, and a freeze is good. To keep Cuvo down, Scream will pick up the kill. Now the Hunters will meet around the Gold Fury pit. That one spawning back in. Trebuchet for the Jade Dragons has been secured as well. That one will go over to the left lane. Could give PandaCat a little bit of assist in that lane to get a little bit of pressure up. Could even potentially open up for the fact that Fury and Pyromancer are both about to respawn. Vote will Aegis out the entirety of PandaCat's ultimate, who will beads the ultimate from Vote. PandaCat is diving this and just did it to him. It just soloed him.
Look, just on her things, right?
Just PandaCat things.
They loaded into the 1v1 on her joust. PandaCat didn't even realize he was playing the rest of the competitive game. He just knew he needed the kill. He dives the tower for it. Look, that one, yeah, it's just clean. And well played. That's actually a really important kill for him. Has a lead 2 levels over Vote as well. So that already feels great. And that's something they mentioned on the desk. Last game, PandaCat didn't get to have a lot of control.
Aegis gone from Dardes. FineOK. Sherman under the tower. PBM stunned out on the other side of the wall. Another stun is good. And Dardes will pick up the double kill. This back and forth. We're going to kill one, then they're going to kill one, and we're going to kill another one. It's made it to where this is a very even game still at this point through. No one really getting an advantage, but maybe the Oni Warriors can find something with this pick by going towards the Pyromancer, but just as soon as they eyed over towards it, they've immediately turned their sights away from it.
And towards Scream, right? Maybe try and turn it into something a little more. Scream, lucky to get away. I think recognizes how close they were to death. And this is where the Coerce comes in. We were talking about Objective Burn. The desk had mentioned it. But double Hunter plus Coerce, they're going to burn this Fire Giant.
Frenzy as well. Fire Giant, good as gone.
My God.
Oni Warriors grab it, but an ultimate does manage to clip Cuvo Fred before he goes up to the sky, but there's nothing else beyond there. There's no follow-up whenever he lands in. The Oni Warriors, they get Fire Giant, they get Scream, and now the game, the momentum has shifted to the Chaos team.
Now, we were talking about it a little bit earlier, and it's playing on my mind right now, especially with the control that the Warriors just gave themselves. But 10-set win streak so far for the Dragons. Again, something that I personally don't expect to see and would not expect to see last throughout Phase 3. But it might not even last past 10.
Might not even last past this week.
No.
Or today, at the rate that it's going.
Well, because, you know, we were talking about it, and a lot of it was because back when NRG was in this conversation, it was 2-0 counts as a win, 1-1 is a tie. That's the reason that their streak stops, is they tied somebody. They go 27-1 throughout all of that phase. And so if, you know, depending on how it worked out, and I'd have to go double check, it was either 20 games in a row they won or 21 games in a row they won. And so it was a very impressive feat, no matter what at the time. But seeing this, I mean, how close it is. It's definitely not anything that's down and out for the Dragons, but definitely something that's probably playing on their mind, at least playing through my mind, right? With the way the Warriors are playing, really good engage, fantastic burn. I mean, that call was just so well timed. It's almost unfortunate they haven't been able to do anything massive with this buff just yet, this power play. What, a minute and a half, almost 2 minutes that have been expended. They've definitely been able to farm up, and the experience that you see up there, the plus 4,000, that does matter because nobody's level 20 yet. So all of that is being felt full in actuality. And same thing for like the gold difference, that huge swing back in their favor. That makes it such a big deal. And there's still 3 towers on the map. There's still so much gold for them to be able to pick up. And with 2 hunters between Vote and Dardes, they're going to make quick work of it. You throw Coerce, like Neil did, onto one of them. You just knock it down like it's nothing. That's a tier 1. Maybe it's going to be a little longer for the tier 2. But I think the Dragons have to figure out what kind of defense they want to mount. And to the point where, like you said last game, and what we're going to see here, a soft defense maybe around this tier 2. Because when it comes down to Phoenix defenses, Pagon's going to be decent enough at warding people off. Will clear the wave, no problem, so you don't have to worry about the backdoor protections for the Phoenix. You've got Scream, who with a good blink knockup is going to be able to pull somebody really, really good engage for him. But maybe a lot of it's going to rely on Mike more than anything else, just to make sure that a freeze, a wall, something goes in their favor.
Transform out of Neil, but ultimate from Pagon. Neil tries to jump away and gets yanked back into the tower. And that is a 1 pick for the Jade Dragons, one they so desperately needed as well. Neil Ma may have pulled the trigger a bit too early with their call. Goes to the transform, pops the frenzy and the coerce. And you saw what Mike did to stop that. Here's a wall. Good luck firing through that.
Yeah, that's a power play killer, right? I mean, like you've got such a massive lead. Potential to get a Phoenix if you're the Warriors, and instead of losing Neil, you get a kill. Instead, it all falls apart right there, right? I think that there's nothing that you get to do for the remaining minute after Neil dies, now 30 seconds, that you have the buff. Even worse for them is the timing on this Fury, because it's not coming up in time for them to really be present for it, to really be able to do anything. So with the Dragons getting aggressive, you might even be able to see a small clapback from the Order side team to just get something in their favor. And so JMac, even after a massive Fire Giant, and what I would argue is a very, very clever call for them, it's just a slight lead, right? Not even anything massive for the Warriors at this point. And so really good position for the Dragons to be in, to try and fight back, to try and keep some of the control of this game back in their favor. And we're starting to get to the point where it's going to be who has the better team fight. I like the engage from the Warriors. I think I like the team fight a little bit from them as well.
Oh.
Especially if they can pick off Scream in the jungle.
Good by Qvo. Gets the beats from 2 different people in that fight. One with a sash, one with an ult. And now it's the only Warriors with a new kind of power play. One where they don't have fire, but okay, never mind, power play instantly gone. Neil Ma, as soon as he lands, gets knocked up and taken down. And it's just been thwarted right away. Only Warriors plans. They had it, and Jade Dragons just said no.
That's so I honestly kind of anticipated using this point for the Dragons, but it works just as well for the Warriors, which is that when your solo laner has a build that is not very tanky or up front, Nika's not able to step in and take the same spot. Now, Nika's still going to be tanky enough, again, Guardian scaling, etc., 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 all that stuff. But you still don't have a lot that's going in your favor versus having someone like Neil try to just stand inside that Phoenix for a little while and take that damage for you. So it really does kind of reset them. Neil still being gone for 10 more seconds, but you don't have the burn. You have better secure. This is an interesting spot for the Dragons to be in.
Nika's trying to run past not only the wall, but the pillar left by Panda Cat. And now with all 5 players for both teams up on the map, Fire Giant should not go to the Warriors for free this time. Minion waves pushed up for the Dragons. They don't have to worry about that. Pyromancer will also go to the Jade Dragons, which now leaves all 10 players on this right side because the Fire Giant back up could be a very fast call for the Warriors if the Dragons are caught slacking just a little while. But with all the ward covers that the Dragons have up there, they should know at any point if the Warriors do step into the pit.
I think this Fire Giant, it's really weird to try and evaluate the worth of a Fire Giant. Because, 1 to 2 Phoenixes for the Warriors would make it absolutely worthwhile if they get this one. And things like that. But I think value-wise, gold-wise, more than anything, this is a really good value pickup if the Dragons are able to get it. 4 towers that are still on the map, a lot of money that can then flow straight into their pocket, plus a gold Fury on the inside. Winning this wins you a lot of gold if you're the Dragons. Gives you not only enough to kind of catch up to the Warriors, but enough to surpass them by a mile, and then really cement yourself some control of this game. But like you said, you can't be caught slacking. You can't be caught out or anything like the sort. Because all it takes is one pick or one mistake, one misstep, anything like that. The Warriors can eat you alive. And they have the burn. I mean, we saw it. Frenzy is up right now. They've got that plus the ult into the coerce. All they need is a small play in their favor, and the Warriors will burn this FG.
Mike doesn't find a freeze. Instead, only discovers death in the middle of 5. Neil Ma used his ultimate already, and now it should be a Fire Giant over to the Oni Warriors because the Dragons can't step into the pit. No Frenzy needed. Coerce up just at the end of it all. Oni Warriors grab their second Fire Giant. Once again, the Jade Dragons have been put on defense.
Remember that thing that I was saying about don't step, like can't be caught out of position, all that? Yeah, unfortunately, well, Mike's dead. And that's all we'll say about that. We'll move on instead to look at what they can do. Again, a little bit of clear. I actually like this call. Scream, and specifically Fine OK is going to get a tier 2. So guaranteed you're going to match at least a little bit of the gold output. Since you got the tier 1 in mid, that's also going to help alleviate some of it.
Whoa.
You're losing way too much to make this worthwhile anymore.
Was that just Nika's damage?
It had to be a little more than Nika's damage, but it was mostly Nika's damage.
I don't know. I mean, he's got a fighter's mask. He's got Bancroft.
Yeah, he hits pretty hard.
Or Rongda's mask, fully upgraded at this point. Plus the Bancroft, Typhon. I think Nika may have just 1v1'd him in one. Handedly.
You don't get either of those tier 2s that the Assassins were split pushing for. They're both at half health, so that might be helpful for the Dragons if they survive throughout this. But you lose the right side Phoenix, you lose Panda Cat. 20 seconds that you have to defend. That's at least a second Phoenix for the Warriors, so a really easy opening for them. No big picks since then, so it doesn't seem like the Warriors are going to be able to walk into the base and have any sort of presence there. And so now it comes down to, again, you know, worthiness, worthwhileness, how much gold they're going to have in their pockets. The tier 2 is going to give, what, 300 a player, plus this Fury is going to bump that up a little bit, plus the money they had before. You can already see 1,600 and up, plus this gold Fury. So we're going to be looking at potentially like tier 3 upgrade, just straight up for Dardes if he backs here soon, depending on, the camps and everything. It's a lot of items that are about to line the pockets of the Warriors. It's a lot that is going to give them massive power spikes, plus 2 Fire Minion waves and a Trebuchet that's spawning, which you know is going to spawn in mid, so you have that now enabled to help give you a little extra push. With 2 minutes left on the Fire Giant, I mean, a lot of work that the Warriors are going to be able to do here. And that's just too bad for the Dragons, right? I mean, again, looking at their engage, looking at where their fights are going to be, a lot of it's going to be if Scream can find some engage, but you got to look at Mike. He got bursted, burned down incredibly quickly. 2 levels still down on Neil Ma. With the builds that these Hunters have, very similar to last game, they're just going to eat through his health bar like it's nothing.
Tough position for the Dragons
He
to
got
be
a
in.
poly too.
So if he wasn't already one-tapping,
He's just one punch.
he will actually probably kill him with just the one alone. Probably not entirely. There's a little bit of extra HP nowadays, but 1-2 combo from Nika will be more than enough to take down any of these mages at this point.
He's just one punch man.
And the Jade Dragons, with 1 Phoenix left to defend. Neil Ma will transform, drops the Coerce, and the mid lane Phoenix will go uncontested. The Jade Dragons now only have the Titan as their form of defense. Cuvo Fred finds the ult, gets the beads right away. Neil Ma finds a stun, and Nika goes in. Pagon survives for just a moment, but the tremors from Nika are too much. The fields of love are there. The Jade Dragons have been slain. The Oni Warriors will stop the win streak at 10.
Yeah, I mean, forget even the player damage. Just the Titan damage those tremors were doing. How much Nika was able to provide. Again, good bead strippage from Cuvo, right? That Naja all over the map, always making sure to have a lot of presence there. So I think that was beautiful. Double Hunter. Look, that one was one that the longer the game went, the better the draft of the Warriors was going to feel. Even if, I mean, maybe better if they had 2 tanks, but it didn't really come into the play, right? They never really needed it. There were a couple of times on that very first Fire Giant where it was like, if only Nika had a tanky build, maybe you could keep this up. but then he more than made up for it at the end of this game.
Two-tapping everybody?
Yeah, when he's two-tapping everyone, all of a sudden, I don't really care if he was there to tank that Phoenix during the first Fire Giant. He's killing everybody. Neil was still there. Again, the coerce that gives everybody the damage. If it comes down to objective burn and tower burn like that, they had plenty to do, and the Warriors, especially after that first back, just had so much in their favor.
A couple of little picks here and there, slowed down the game just a little bit, but all the momentum was here for the Oni Warriors. They were able to take down the Jade Dragons, stop the win streak there, and they're now the only team in the SPL to remain undefeated going through this week at least. That's all from us on the cast. We'll throw it to the desk to close us out.
Undefeated. That's the word that we have been talking about today. Both teams come in undefeated, and the Oni Warriors are going to leave undefeated. The double Hunter composition with the Fafnir just showed so much objective burn. You know, it seemed like the Jade Dragons, even when they could defend, weren't able to get to these objectives on time. It looked a little sketchy at times when Neil Ma kept getting pulled back in by that Awilix, and I was like, okay, maybe the Siege just not going to work. After the Magi's came through, and after, you know, when Panda Cat got 100-0'd, that's when I knew. I was like, okay, the Oni Warriors have this game on lockdown.
That was crazy.
I mean, double relics up. Nika just said, hey, I upgraded Ranger's Mask. I'm just going to blink in and see what happens. And Panda Cat, I saw his eyes go, like, what? How much damage just came to me?
You know, his teammates are like, dude, you still have Aegis. But they watch that back and they're like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, I did not expect that. That was crazy damage, honestly. I mean, I'm not sure I was a believer of the full damage cab. I was a believer after that play.
Yeah, after that play, that's when you realize, okay, Kavrakin, yeah, he's good in support, but also throw him over to solo every once in a while. And again, the team comp, I think that has just been evolving over this set, right? In game number 1, the Oni Warriors went a little bit too much late game, but then here in game number 3, they had just the good balance of double Hunter for that late game, sure, but then Cuva and the Naja to slow things down. I want to know all about this composition, but I don't have to speculate with you because Gormides are sitting by to talk to the Oni Warriors after that win.
Neil from the Warriors standing by. A nice win. First game, you guys kind of went for a late game draft. It was very quick. 23 minutes, I think, for the Dragons there. What were you thinking after game 1? How did you kind of translate that into game 2 to make sure that the changes happened?
I just think that our draft game 1 wasn't that good. They just kind of ran us over and we didn't have an answer. So we just changed up some picks for game 2 and just said, like, look, game 1, I mean, it just didn't go our way. Like, just mentally reset game 2, change up the draft, and go from there.
Now, I do know you had said that you don't get role swapped on. And I want to know, like, so do you contribute game 2? Was it Scream in mid, or was it the Zeus, like, or was it a fusion of both? Like, what was it that gave you guys the advantage there to come back?
Oh, well, they just made us actually try. Like, when you role swap, I mean, then you're going to get it. We're not getting embarrassed out here most of the time.
Most of the time. And then you come in, you get this win for game number 3. That feels like, again, a nice one for you guys. You're, 2-0 now. Feels like a good streak to start things off, especially compared to Phase 2. What's the horizon looking like for the Warriors?
I think it's the same as always. We're just going to keep improving day by day, and I think that after this year, things are really starting to click for us. I think we're all figuring out each other's play style, our god pools, and the way we should play the map. So we're feeling pretty dangerous, and if I keep Fafnir hunting or Phoenixes and dying, we're going to be going straight to World's Finals, baby.
Here right now, going straight to World's Finals, only if Neil is dying after he Fafnir ults. It's great for these guys. They get a nice win. Congratulations once again. We'll go back to the desk and break it down.
We're not getting embarrassed most of the time. That's what I took from that, and I think a good motto to go about in your daily life. Neil Ma, ever the charismatic man after the win, you know, very humbling in the sense of, you know, we knew what we did wrong. You know, the draft was just not, we didn't have any answers in game number 1. After we started trying after the role swap, then it was all locked in. And I do think clean play throughout. We were worried about the aggression from the supports in that lane, you know, who was going to get the advantage. But once PBM went for that invade, wasn't able to steal the buff away, and then it just seemed like all-out aggression from this side of the map. You can see, look at the level disadvantage. A level 8 vote, PBM sitting at 5. It's just so much damage coming from the duo lane in particular.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the draft these games, and there's a lot of flavor picks, and people got pushed really deep in some of their god pools, so it was kind of cool to see some of these other picks, like on her, you know, we saw Kernanos mid today. You know, we just saw a lot of interesting stuff, especially, you know, this Kabrakan full damage. That was just so fun to watch. Just look at that damage. That was just incredible. I mean, for me personally, today was a big meta-defining day with all these kind of new picks. It was a big day for the Warriors to show they could beat the Dragons. And for me, especially, it was a big day for Dardas to show, hey, you can target ban me out all you want. I'm going to play Kernanos and make it look that good. So honestly, today was just a big day, a battle of the giants, if you will. I don't think the Dragons have too much to hang their hat on, but I still think they're fantastic team. I think they'll bounce back. They just got to source some stuff, especially in these picks and bans, and they'll be raring to go soon again.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. First thing I want to mention is the fact that Nika didn't even use one of his abilities there and still one-shot Panic Cat. But ignoring that for a second, I think we talked about this on SPL Waiting Room. Did the Dragons want to go into like a Worlds qualifier situation where they were undefeated and have a little bit under them? And I think this was a humbling loss, as you said. Go back to the drawing board, picks and bans-wise. I think the compositions just need a little bit of work. They clearly have the talent. I mean, they had a fair lead throughout this game, but it just seemed like the duo lane pressure from the get-go sort of put PBM behind, and when you're down a tank in that sense, it's very difficult to try and mount back a comeback and just say, okay, we're going to draw a line in the sand here. This is where we're going to fight. The Ymir was just never tanky enough to live through those engagements.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think that was a pretty interesting development that we saw in the duo lane with the purple invades. Neil had a fantastic play to secure his purple without using his hog. I think a big reason Mike goes there is to force that hog, so on the second purple respawn, they don't have it. So they can successfully invade without having to worry about hog. But Neil held onto it and still secured the buff. And then Mike and Panic Cat had to actually play from behind as Ymir on her. And I think that actually really set the pace for this game, especially to be a Ymir from behind, especially with an early death as well. That is a really, rough start to a game, especially as an immobile god like Ymir. So really unfortunate start to the game. I think the head was in the right place, but honestly, just a fantastic play from Neil to kind of get them out of that early game safely and put their duo lane actually ahead instead of behind.
All right, so that's going to wrap up our talk about that game, but we still have a little bit more SPL to go tomorrow, so let's take a look at the schedule and see what we've had thus far this week and what we still have to come. So as you can see at the top, Valks 2-0ing the Bolts, the Camelot Kings getting a 2-0 over the Scarabs. Today, we saw the Tartarus Titans 2-0 the Valks, and then the Oni Warriors taking on the Jade Dragons. Only one more undefeated team leaves, and that will be the Warriors. But tomorrow, early 11 a.m., the Olympus Bolts taking on the Atlantis Leviathans, followed after by the Camelot Kings v Oni Warriors. And then the Jade Dragons come back to go out to the Tartarus Titans, and that'll be ending our week of SPL. So all exciting stuff. We get a look at the standings to see where everyone is really rounding out towards the end of week number 2. And you can see the Oni Warriors clenching that number 1 spot, 2-0. The Jade Dragons still there at number 2, 2-1. Not going to fall too far below, but hey, these games tomorrow could certainly mix some of that up. Do you have any favorites, or you think the Jade Dragons are ones to bounce back after a loss like that, or do you think that it's really going to weigh on their minds a bit?
Yeah, they have a tough matchup against the Titans, so we'll see how they hold up against those guys. The Titans fresh off a win, the Dragons fresh off a loss. I think the Dragons are a team that can just bounce back in. They're going to have a long talk. They're going to figure it out. They're going to come back in strong tomorrow. I think they have what it takes. I'm also excited to see how the Bolts are going to do. They're on a bit of a downtrend, so playing against the Leviathans, that's a great check for them. We're going to see if they can kind of work their way back to their former glory, or if they're going to continue that downtrend. So a lot of great games tomorrow, Charlie.
Yeah, a lot of great games. Something to remember. Again, this is the road to World, so you got to make sure you're bringing everything every time. The Jade Dragons, as you said, always hungry, ready to bounce back. A good, maybe just sit down tonight, think about what went wrong and that sort of thing. I've got no doubts they'll be able to bounce back tomorrow strong. But that's all the SPL we have today. I mean, it's been a great time. On behalf of myself, Trelly Relly, and Hurrywin, thank you guys so much for watching. And we're just going to throw it on out of here. So have a good day and peace out.